vibrant city where genuine, resilient residents enjoy living in an appealing, safe, and welcoming community filled with boundless opportunities. That's what we're trying to build a budget for, is so that we can support that vision. Our mission is the City of Rawlins is dedicated to building public trust by providing exceptional services in a professional, safe, transparent, and fiscally responsible manner. So all things that we have done in this falls back onto those two things that we feel are vitally important as a mission and vision. On the next slide, I want to go over with you the how we are structured financially in the City of Rawlins. You know, what funds do we have? How do the funds interact? What do the funds mean? And how does it all come together? So in governmental accounting, every organization will have a general fund. The general fund captures everything within the organization that is not legally restricted to be in a separate fund. Okay, so it's kind of the catch-all as to all the departments accounting that we do. And for the City of Rawlins, it is by far the largest fund that we have. We do have a governmental type, which is a special revenue fund, which is accounted for outside of the general fund, which is called the specific purpose funds. These funds are legally restricted to be spent in the way that the donor, or how we collect that, it has to be spent in accordance with the law. General fund is a little more open. We get our revenue and we can kind of choose. These, there's a specific source, and we're legally bound to that. And those funds that we have are what we call the specific purpose fund for 2019, and that is the 6-penny tax is what we know it as. The city also operates 4 enterprise funds, which are proprietary funds by nature. They are run like businesses, so they collect revenues, and we operate the fund based on those revenues. So tonight we're going to talk about the water fund, the sewer fund, the landfill fund, and the recycling fund. Those are the 4 enterprise funds that we have. There again, the revenues that are raised by those activities have to be spent to support that activity. And the city operates one internal service fund, which is a proprietary fund, which still operates the same in that it collects revenues and expends. And that is our self-insurance. That's that health insurance that the city has. Okay, so we have a health insurance fund. Whatever goes into that fund is legally restricted after we put it there to support the function of our health insurance. Okay, and that's all the funds that we have. So everything else that we have, it all fits into one of those funds. Okay, on the next slide, this is kind of a colorful slide. So when we adopt a budget, when the council adopts a budget, we have 6 different audit categories, budget categories that we adopt. So all the departments to the left are the departments of the general fund. Okay, and they all fit into 6 different categories. So the red ones, starting on the left with city council, city manager, as you see the red ones, all of those fit the category of general government. In our audit report that we submit at the end of the year, that goes all the different areas, we report how we did budget-wise within that category. So, city council, city manager, all of those are all added up into one number. And it says for general government, here's how we did, here's what the budget was, here's how we ended, and here's what's left within that at the end of the year. So we can do budget transfers in between categories of the like categories, okay? But if we move money from one category to another category, that requires city council approval. So if we wanted to move from city council to the police department, that would take council action. If if we wanted to move from city council to city manager, that can be done and still keep it within those categories. We cannot add budget in this without going through a budget amendment through the council for approval. So I wanted to share with you how those departments flow into the different audit categories that we have. Okay, and those 6 audit categories to the right appear in our audit report with the budget results. Okay, so if we go over in one of those departments, another department in that category can kind of make up for it, but it cannot go in between categories. Okay? All right, on the next slide, we're going to dive into some numbers here. So the budget for 2023 that was shared with the council last June is the schedule to the left. And as you can see in the fiscal year 2023 category proposed, we showed in there that our total revenues equaled our total expenditures and that we balanced the budget. Okay, that's what that shows, and that's what was shared in June. Okay, when I went through the other night and was putting together the financial performance report that I send out, I started comparing what we have to this. And what I found is that in these numbers under revenues, under other financing sources, we had amounts in there that actually represent cash reserves. And cash reserves are not classified as revenue. Okay, that's the cash that we have in the bank that we're holding for a rainy day or that we're holding for some other purpose. And so when I saw that those were cash reserves, I knew that there had to be an expenditure recorded that was going to take stuff out, for like an emergency reserve. So when I got in there, I found that 4.5 million is recorded as an emergency reserve in there. So we put the cash reserves in and we took some out as an emergency reserve. Well, the net impact of doing that is that the revenues that we were going to receive in fiscal year 23 to the right total 11,964,000, not 21,054,000. On the expenditures, if you back off the emergency reserve, the dangerous buildings reserve, and the recreation, I said recreation center, it's all recreation departments, you back those off. The budget that was passed had 1.9 million more in expenditures than what it really truly showed in revenues. Okay, the difference being cash reserves that we put in and we took out a different amount. So if you actually remove the cash reserves on the revenues and the expense, the budget that was passed had more expenditures of roughly $2 million in it, okay, than what we had incoming revenues outgoing expenses. So to begin this fiscal year that we're in, you could tell that we're already down about $2 million that we're going to have to try to fix in this upcoming year. Okay? And so, so we are down about 1.9 million to begin the year. If you flip to the next slide, the next page, I've met with all the departments within the city. We've gone over the budgets, and each of them had a budgetary ask, okay? Not that we have cut that down yet. I kind of took the asks that they had, and I listened to the reasoning behind those asks. So the initial version that you get, okay, is based on those asks. I think there is room to cut back a little bit on those, but for now, that's the ask. So the 2023, we just looked at on the previous slide. The 2024, okay, our variance is 1,784,000 at the end of the year. That's what we have more in expenditures than we have in budgeted incoming revenues. Okay? Now, one thing within the general fund revenue that we're going to hit on in the enterprise funds that is a concern is that last year, the enterprise funds, the water fund, sewer, landfill, recycling, there were services that were provided to those funds that were provided within the general fund. Okay, they weren't directly charged to the water or the enterprise funds. And what those are is like our city engineer is 100% charged to Public Works, but he does work during the year for the water department, the sewer department, and so his salary should kind of be allocated in those areas. When I added those up, the revenue, or those operating transfers, they amounted to $844,000. Now, I could not find like a reconciliation as to what that includes in there, so we are trying to go back to justify that or to see what, that could be. So most of the salaries are already charged to the water or the sewer fund. For instance, our public works director is 20% general fund, 40% water, 40% sewer. He's already charged there. So we have to go back and justify what those are. But what I am showing here, just for a preview when we get to the enterprise funds here, is the water fund and the sewer fund, the financial condition of those funds, really they're not in a position to transfer those funds back to the general fund. If we do, we're gonna have to turn around general fund and transfer more money back to the water sewer to operate. Okay, so if for the purpose of this right now, if we back those off, we're looking at a budget right now with about 2.6 million more in expenditures than what we have in revenues. Okay? And we will talk about that 844, the operating transfers here at a later point, but I just wanted to share with you that what we're going to look at, we are looking probably at about $2.6 million that, more expenditures than revenues, that we're going to have to do something revenue-wise or expenditure-wise to bring this to a balanced budget. All right, just as an update for you here, I wanted to show to you tonight on this next slide just a comparison of our revenues that we've received through March of this year to where they were last year. So as you can see up there, taxes and assessments have had about an 11.61% increase over last year. Okay, and as I will show you here, the budgets on the next slide, that falls pretty much into line to what we expected through the reports and the information from the state. We get information through the Craig report from the state of Wyoming that we budget this off of. But you can see that is an increase within the general fund. And overall, when you go through all of the categories, we're up about 1.2 million more in revenue this year than we were at this point last year, which is a very good thing. Most of it being taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, and all those taxes that we have. And that's about a 14.6% increase. And then you can see where the operating transfers stand and the ARPA grants that we received. Okay, on the next slide, we compare the amounts that we've received through March to the annual budget that we have. Okay, so that's gonna tell us to date kind of where we stand with the amount that was budgeted. And as you can see, sales or taxes and assessments, we have a $9.1 million budget, and to date, we're at $8 million essentially. If you look at the variance, we're about a million ahead of schedule from what we had budgeted. In the FAR variance column, you'll see that we've received 88% of the budget to date, and we're 75% the way through the year. So we are doing very well. If you look at the map on the right, what this map shows is the change in taxable sales for the fourth quarter of 2021 through the fourth quarter of 2022. And you will see down there for Carbon County that we've actually had a 44.4% increase in taxable sales during the year. Why that is, I have a guess. I think it's a whole lot of different things. If you look at the sales tax cumulative grant on the bottom left, you'll see that we followed budget right up until about January, February, and the gray line there is starting to separate itself from the budget. And what that tells me is kind of what happened in January, February, March. I think with the storms that we had, the snow, I think people stayed home and spent more in Carbon County than going to Fort Collins or somewhere else to spend. That's my guess.
Snowed in.
Could be a number of other things.
Bonuses.
But I think we were kind of snowed in, and I think a lot more was spent locally. And the reason I say that is budgeting for next year, that makes it tricky to kind of see an increase and it comes back. And so I will show you what we estimate for next year here in a minute. But anyway, just kind of know as of late is where we've got that separation in the sales tax. And if you look at the state map again, only Weston County has had a higher increase in taxable sales than we have in the state. We actually led the state with Weston County as to increase in taxable sales. Okay, on the next slide here, I wanted to share with you the actual revenues for the past couple of years, and then in green is what we are estimating for 2024. Okay, the Craig report that came out from the state, okay, basically shows us that we are looking at overall about a 3% increase in sales tax over the amounts from this year. Okay, so sales tax is looking to be 3% of an increase, and then the same report tells us that royalty and severance tax will decrease roughly 12%. That's the taxes that we get from oil and coal, and that is really starting to drop off in the state, as we all know. So they're looking at about a 12% decrease there and about a 3% increase in sales tax. And so, and then one other item that will affect sales tax is we get from the state each year what they call a direct distribution from the state. So years ago, within the state of Wyoming, food was subject to sales tax. When the state dropped that tax, it was going to hurt all of the municipalities, organizations that relied on sales tax because they just lowered the tax. So they always put $120 million over into a direct distribution that was allocated out to cities to help compensate for that removal of sales tax on food. In this year, through the legislature, House Bill 185 kind of went back and forth through the legislature, but the end result is the governor recommended that they put in an additional $26,250,000 into that direct distribution to cities. Okay, and that was signed into law. So it went to where it was written out, it was cut in half, but in the end, it was all restored. And my best estimation of that is about $250,000 that we'll receive more through that direct distribution than what we do. So when I go and add those different things in, the taxes and assessments will increase roughly 2.6%. That's the estimate that we made. And so that will give us a little bit of additional revenue. From my understanding right now is the addition to the direct distribution is kind of a one-time shot, that they may come back next year and add it back. But I believe it's one time, isn't it?
Yes, and that 120 million or whatever's been there for what, 7 or 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so every year, what we get out of it's still 120, whatever, but with the inflation, it goes down, and I think they're trying to make that up with the 26 million is kind of the way I got it, to bring it back up to cost of living, but they didn't want to make it a yearly thing, so it's an additional thing. We'll have to fight for it every year.
Yeah, so we'll have to fight for that again, but it is added into the budget right now as an increase, which will definitely help us. There really won't be much change in the intergovernmental services, charges for services within the general fund. We went through those real well with staff. One area that we really lack in right now is within our investment interests that we have. And if you flip to the next slide here, I'm sorry, there's a lot of numbers on these slides. We just have to, and it's more for effect that there's a lot than there is some numbers. But anyway, on the left-hand side, what I want to show here is these are all the bank accounts that the city has. And I think they add up to 24 or 25 bank accounts. Okay? We have at June 30th, 2022, which this has increased a little bit as you can see from the revenues, we had roughly $33 million in overall cash reserves. That's all the funds combined. And where they are sitting in bank accounts at the bank, our interest rates that we receive on that are very small, because most of these are checking accounts that really don't draw a lot of interest. So our overall interest budget was about $72,500. And as most of you know, as of late, interest rates have climbed. When I worked on this, the Goldman Sachs one-year CD rate was 3.75. That's kind of an estimate of where we should, be at. If we were to invest this and to manage our bank accounts better, which we're not going to get that on all of it because we can't put all of it, in higher interest, but we can manage better. If you had it all in there, the interest earned at 3.75 is about 1.2 million, and we're at about 72,000. So what that means is we need to manage our cash a whole lot better. And now, through the Amendment A, that we had, we can invest some of this into equities now, which if we do that through the state and use their investment expertise, we can get this up over 4%, I'm sure.
Is that what they're currently running?
The state, as I know right now, does not have through WildStar an equities account yet set up. They're still working on that. So what they are looking at is a WildStar, then like a WildStar A or something, which is the equities. They do not have that set up to where we can transfer into there yet. So to be honest, I don't know what the state is making on their investments, but it would be at the level that, you know, that the state is making because it is with their investment funds that we would invest. I think it's even higher than 4%.
That they're clearing right now?
Yep.
That one organization that Joan Evans is director of, I can't think of the name of it.
Wyoming Governmental Investment Funds.
Yeah, they were at 4.35 or something when we were at WHAM. That's what their rate was. It goes up and down, but that's what theirs was at that time.
Yeah. So they're making well over 4, but we don't have a banking structure right now that will support that, and I'm going to get into that. And we really don't have accounting procedures in place that helps us with our cash flow needs, predicting our cash flows. And it's not that hard, but right now I think that's why it's just sitting in these bank accounts. Is enterprise has a fund, you can see general fund, and as the money comes in, it just goes in this account, and this account is expended here. We need to revise our entire banking structure into sweep accounts, repurchase accounts, zero balanced accounts. There's a whole world of banking technology that we really need to tap into. That will help us with that.
So currently, all of our money is sitting in accounts that are not generating.
Not very much interest, very low interest rates.
Okay, and the 100-year average for the S&P is over 10%. And we're looking to get 4?
Well, one thing there is that it depends how much risk that we want to take, you know, with public funds. If we were to go through the state and use their professionals, I think we'd be looking at about 4 to 5. That'd be my guess. If it was our own personal money, you could get more aggressive with it. But I don't think with public funds, I would get that aggressive. I would just make sure that we get a good return, decent return on it.
Okay.
At a little bit lower risk. And that's why Amendment A was so debated over, is do you really want finance directors playing the stock market with public funds?
Well, the problem that I have is that the state of Nevada uses one guy who invests only in the S&P, and he gets paid $250,000 a year to do that. And it's completely passive to him, and he averages 10%. And we have an entire department in Cheyenne that is like a $2 million budget to get us 4%.
I'll look into it. I see what you're saying. We want to maximize our investment income.
But we're still fairly limited on the high pay because of the high risk. I mean, we can't just go out and invest in, maybe the guy in Nevada has a little longer leash than we have in Wyoming.
But it's just him.
Right, but you understand what I'm saying. It's very limited what.
Well, they're not limited. The
Amendment,
state's not limited.
Well,
And
no.
we piggyback on them.
Right, but I don't want them running too big a risk with my money up there either.
I'm just saying that that's what
Quite
they
honest
do.
with you.
I mean, they're sitting on billions of dollars.
Right.
And we're just piggybacking on their money, is what we're doing. We're adding our money to their money so we get the maximum return. But
One of the problems with the state having that billions and billions of what it invested in China or wherever they should have invested it in Wyoming. That just gives me heartburn, but
I agree.
we have to have a certain amount in savings or whatever, reserves, whatever, just to cover whatever could happen.
It's liquidity that we have to worry about, whether or not we can cash out of an account to take care of a problem that we may or may not have. That's what WildStar gives us.
But our possibility of having a disaster that we might need a lot of money for because of the interstate, the railroad, such like that, is a lot greater than a lot of places in Wyoming.
Right, so as long as you can cash out of your accounts to take care of that problem, whatever it is, then you're okay.
Right.
And that's
Like
essentially,
long-term CDs,
yeah,
no liquidity to them.
you're stuck.
Yeah.
Or a bond, you're
Yeah.
stuck. So,
Yeah, what I would envision that, you know, that we would build, we would have three different types of investments. A short term, that we can meet our immediate needs or those things. I'd have a intermediate term up to a year that you could always move short-term funds into on a good year, or if you have to pull. And then I would put some into long-term, and that's where a lot of the interest and money will come from if you can lock it up for over a year. And I think on 32 million, we could definitely put quite a bit into a long-term category that would draw the higher interest rates than the short-term that won't pay as much.
in a combined group, what's the target percentage that you're looking to get to?
I think what I would do is we'd have to look at our cash flow needs through the year. But I would keep between 15 and 25% in short term, which is still a chunk. And then I would keep roughly 20 to 25% in the intermediate, and I would go for well over half of it into the long term, the higher interest bearing.
And so in total, that is 5%, 4%, 29%.
I think it would overall average,
Please.
but I will call the guy in Nevada, see what I can do.
You know, yeah,
Anytime we can make 3.75% or 4%, 5%, that's way better than the
What's it, 0.74,
0.1% or whatever
Yeah,
it is,
0.1.
or
No,
1%.
I think 4% within a governmental organization is doing well, to be honest with you.
okay.
I mean, we're looking at maybe 1.1, 1.3 million on our, ROI is going to be 1.1, 1.3 compared to 72,000. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. But I will show you a slide here later, but I believe we need to restructure what we're doing here as soon as we can. That needs to be a very high priority. And I have added to the revenue budget about 240,000 more in interest income for next fiscal year. Because I think we can do some quick fixes to at least get to that point.
It's a chunk, that's good.
Okay. Now, I'm going to get into some slides that will compare different years of the budget. And what my purpose here in this is I want to show that over the last 2 to 3 years, we have really grown our expenditures over that time. Okay, we've added more services, we've added more staff, we've done a lot as a city to add a lot to expenditures, and we really did not increase the revenues. And this is what led to the shortage that I shared with you earlier, that we're about $2.6 million higher in expenditures. So the first slide that I have here is something that concerns me a little bit, in that I issue reports to all the department heads monthly, okay, which show all of their spending by month, where they stand budget-wise. So I pulled off of that. Well, at the end of March, we put in a form of a spending freeze, okay? We've asked department heads to spend everything that is discretional in their budget before March 31st, so that I could go through the books and predict where we're gonna end the year. Okay, if we wait till June, we have a frenzy of spending that comes through the finance office, and we never know if we're in budget, out of budget, we just don't know where it's at. And as I see all the invoices and things stack up, I get concerned that, do we really have budget, or we fall, what's happening? So I've asked all department heads to spend their discretional budgets by March 31st. And so that's like all office supplies, if they need inventory items at the shop, to restock inventory, to do all those things that they can to get all that in place by March 31st. And so I went through department by department to see where we were gonna finish the year. Are we gonna be at budget, over budget, under budget? And what I found in total, okay, overall, is this next slide that will show you the budget category, the object codes going across with the total clear to the right. So with capital included, which we will spend capital still, where it was frozen, we needed time to do RFPs and to get stuff out, and with the supply chain kind of the way it is, it's taking time. So you could see that the overall carryover as of March 31st estimated for the end of the year, this is with all expenses for April, May, and June already in, to say fuel cost, I left those in, estimated it. I estimate that we're gonna have roughly 1.3, close to $1.4 million of a carryover. Which I say carryover, but what it is unused budget. Budget that we put out there last year that really was not gonna be spent. You can see the different categories that it falls in. Salaries, there's about 213,000. A lot of that is we had a couple positions where people resigned that were not filled. The economic developments, the grants. So there's like extra budget there because that's not gonna go out to them, we're holding it. So 213 is salaries. You can see the benefits. We budgeted high, I guess, on the high end, that we did not experience those costs, mostly health insurance. But you can see purchase services and supplies are sizable numbers. And what this tells me is that departments are operating really not on a plan. Is that we just kind of have the budget that we allocated the year, we spend, and then we see how we end up. And where we ended up right now is we allocated a lot of budget to places that we didn't have these things happen. Now, some of this, are things that were talked about that we wanted to do that didn't get done. But I think overall, I think we need to build a better budget plan that we hold people to closer. And at the end of next year, when we're sitting here, I want that number to be 100,000 or less. I want what we budget to have a purpose, a plan, and I want to make sure that we monitor it out to the end to make sure that we reach our goals. And I know right now, when I ask, I'm not sure with the goals, that there's just a lot of unknowns, but I think we need to build a plan that really gets it down, because to me, that is way too big of a number. I mean, it's all allocated and it just isn't gonna be spent. I mean, that's what we're gonna carry over, budget-wise. Capital, I think that's 766. Most of that will either be spent or we'll have to roll it to next year. When the items come in and we actually pay it out in cash is when we recognize it budget-wise. But I wanted to share this just so that you know, my focus building the budget next year, we're gonna have to get it down a lot closer to what we're actually doing. I think we've added a lot of things here and there within the budget, just didn't happen. This money could be used in a lot of different places besides just rolling into cash reserves at the end of the year.
Hey, Tom, real quick, the 1.387 there
Yep.
is expected to be the carryover. Is that going to help fix the 2.6?
All right. This number here is 2023 numbers. So if this were to fix one of the numbers, it would be the 1.9 million from 2023 that I shared earlier, where we had 1.9 more in expenditures than revenue. This would come off of the expenditure budget because it's in the budget, not going to be spent. It would help out that number.
Okay.
The goal we have to have is that in 2024, that 2.8 million that we're under, we've got to get that down less than 100 next year.
Okay.
That's my goal.
All right, thank you.
Is we have to build a budget to get this less than 100. So we know what we're gonna spend, where we're gonna spend, how we're gonna spend. We have to have a lot more of a business plan all across the board as to what we're doing. And to me, we establish goals and then we budget to reach those goals. And I like calling that budgeting for outcomes. If you hear that and if it ends up in the budget, that's what I'm referring to, is I want to budget for certain outcomes. At the end of the year, next year, I want to sit down and say, here's our goals, these were the outcomes we budgeted for, we spent this much. Did we reach that outcome or did we not reach the outcome? That's what I owe to the city council each year, to say we reached those goals or no, we did not. We're gonna regroup and here's what we're gonna do for next year, and then that's for the council to say, yeah, or no, we're gonna do it this, or whatever the case may be, but we have to fix that. And that has to be my goal, is to get this. My goal is less than 100. Realistically, it could be about 2 to 250, but I want it below 100. That's my goal. All right. Now, when we look at the 2.8 million that we're over this year, okay, what I want to share with you is to get an idea here of where those increases happen. Okay, I want to show which areas over here that we increased each year that amounted to that 2.8 million that we're over. Okay, so the first step that I did, I have budget worksheets in an Excel file per department. So I just opened a tab and I rolled everything into there for 2024 on the asks. And the 2023 here are still budget numbers, okay? And so between the budget for 23, the budget for 24, the numbers that you're looking here are the differences between those years. So general government salaries in the upper left, we actually decreased 16,900, okay, from the 2024 budget to 23. So if you look over all the way to the right without capital, the budget that we put together through the asks right now at that stage, we are down about 152,000 from the 23 budget. Okay, so we're headed somewhat in the right direction. A big decrease there, as you can see, are the grants and economic development for now that were not rebudgeted, and some other categories that you can see in there. Now, I did this exact thing on the next 2 slides, 3 slides, with actuals from years previous to 2023. So if you look at the next slide that we have up on the thing here, the actual spending from 2022, okay, we do not have that audit back from the auditors, but I went through on most of these things and I just penciled up the audit report. I know that it's right, we just need the auditors to verify that, but I think these are really, really good numbers. Everything is tied out and to the auditors, they just have to test and, put it on the audit report. But as you can see, the actual from 2022 to the budget that we just are working on in 2024, we have increased spending $1.169 million. And so essentially what this says is that within the 2022 to 2023, we increased expenditures $1.1 million. And if you look at the revenues, they probably went up a little bit, but not nearly to this size.
Was some of that our water issue?
No, this is only general fund.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
it's not water fund. I'm sorry, I need to mark these better. I put a lot of these together and I don't.
I
put
just
proper
meant like
headings.
when we gave an amount, we pulled that from the general fund. right?
Well, and what that is right now is showing up as a due from between funds. So the water fund has that amount for the Sage Creek Springs as a liability to the general fund. If the council says so, we could always move that to an operating transfer as revenue, but we set that up as a liability. So it went over to help the funding, but it is sitting up there currently as a liability to the general fund. So it really didn't hit transfers or anything here, it's just a balance sheet. Okay? Now, if you flip back to the next slide, I did the same comparison from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 24. And you can see on there that we increased spending almost $3 million. So in the last few years since 2021, we've really increased our expenditures. And if you look up here, it is spread out fairly evenly throughout the different categories. So we have increased salaries over that time, $660,000. Okay, that's what the increase there. Benefits, we increased health insurance 8% last year, and the year before we had increases. So the benefits budget has increased $1 million, which is kind of based on salaries too, because you have the Wyoming retirement, workers' comp, social security, all those. As it goes up, it's going to increase. But the rest of that increase is health insurance, okay, that we had to fund. Purchase services went up $624,000. What purchase services are is where we contract with contractors for services. They're not things that we do, but we are contracting out. So if we need a light fixed, and if we call the electric company to come fix the light, it's purchase services. If we do it with our staff, it's gonna be a supply for the light and the parts. So that's kind of how we distinguish. So purchase services are where we actually contract or bring in other people, or it is travel, training, all those types of things that happen throughout the city where supplies are tangible items that we buy.
Like one of these purchase services for the police department's $218,000, what could that be?
Could be software
Oh, okay,
that they buy.
like Spillman or something like that?
It could be increase in Spillman, could be fuel costs, because I know fuel's under supplies, I'm sorry. Could be like repairs to the cars or those types of things. I can, Well, actually, I can't, but, I can always give you a little bit more, detail on those in time, if there's things that you wanna see.
Yeah, please do, because
Yeah,
I
let me
just
know
see-
which ones, and I'm happy to share you what those increases are.
it just seems weird to me that, I mean, it's not weird, I guess, but it's without capital, just, I'm not picking on police department, but since 2021, we're up 1.2 million, okay? And we're down officers, is what we're told. So I understand.
We started low and then we gained some.
Yeah, I understand
do a lot of
overtime and stuff like that, but for that kind of
Well, let me show
increase, you could
you,
have 10 officers.
I have some detail for you on that on the next slide. I
Okay.
have some, not to the extent that I think that you want or need, but I have some on the next slide.
Okay.
So anyway, if you look at that without capital, yeah, we've increased about $3 million. General government is up, public works, I mean, every area that you see on here is really increased in what was spent. Clear up to, like I said, about 2.9 million. All right, if you look at the next slide, under
crazy.
police department up here, that is an audit category, police department. You flip to the next page, and what I have on the left-hand side for you are the 3 departments that make up the police department on our general ledger. Okay? So police administration, animal control, 911 center, all of those are what combine to make up the police department for the audit category. Department-wise, they are tracked separately. So you can see that police administration is up about 800,000, animal control 20, but the 911 center is 170,000. So I broke it down a little bit by department for you there. Not so much as to what purchase services are or those. It's just more into those things. And the recreation departments are on the right. So I just kind of broke out a couple of those for you. I was working on breaking out the rest of those, but that's just the ones that I could get. You know, not in any order of importance, they're just 2 that I kind of wanted to show you. That there was increases, and you could see if they were salaries, benefits, or what they were. Okay? All right. On the next slide, this to me was really fascinating to me. Okay? And we're not exactly comparing apples to apples here. Not all the way across the board like I would like to show. But anyway, our budget runs about 14 million this year. And I wanted to know how Rawlins compares to other cities our size. Kind of on overall budget, kind of where they spend it. I know that Lander, Riverton do not do like 911 at the police, it's at the county level. We do it at the city level. So we're not like complete apples to apples here. But I wanted to see kind of by category where they spend their money and how much they spend their money. It kind of tells us to some extent how we compare to these other cities. If you look at it, the first 2 are Wyoming towns, and they're the only 2 towns that I could find that are roughly about 7,900 to 8,400 population with us, and they happen to be side by side in Fremont County. But anyway, Lander, Riverton, their total budgets at Lander's about 7.5 million, and Riverton's about 8 million. Ours is 14. And so I got to thinking, how is it that we have so much more money than Riverton and Lander? I mean, that seemed odd. I would think with their industry that they would have more sales tax and that they would be getting probably more, I mean, are equal with us. I wouldn't think we'd be too far off. I would have put them maybe a little ahead. Well, if you look right down below that, you put in the Rawlins budget, which I don't know where, that number should be 14.1 that I look at it. I don't know why I got the 14.7. But anyway, our revenues reflect the fifth penny tax,
Yeah.
okay, that we use in Carbon County for
It should be the
operations
same as it.
that most other cities in the state of Wyoming do not use for operations. Most of the fifth penny tax and sixth penny tax in most towns are used for capital items. So they usually collect at the county level the 1 cent sales tax. Most of that goes towards capital in those communities. In Carbon County, the 6 penny tax is capital, okay? And that's what we get through Carbon County. But the 5th penny tax, our voters voted to put that in to operations. So when you look at Lander and Riverton, we get essentially 2.5 million, that's my guess, more to operate operations than what they do. Okay? We had 844,000 in operating transfers, general fund. If you back that off, for the year that we have here, you take 1.7 that we're over in expenditures, over revenue, back that off. Recreation, I know that Lander, Riverton, most of that is either through the county or they just don't have the recreation opportunities that we have here. But you back all that off and we come within about $1 million of those cities. And so my point kind of here is that we are really fortunate in Rawlins to have this extra funds. But the way that it appears is that we should be operating between where they're at and our 9 million. We should be operating somewhat in there with the additional 5th penny tax, to support operations. But what's really happening overall in this budget is we have ballooned it to about $14 million. That's just what it is. Which is 6 million more than these other communities have to operate, and they operate on that amount. So I mean, it's like we've kind of added services and different things. Moving to the top of that schedule again, moving to the right, I went through Colorado and I grabbed 3 different cities out of Colorado our size: Fort Lupton, Trinidad, and Craig. And what I've learned is that Colorado has a lot more money for their cities than what Wyoming does, that they've got pretty good budgets. Fort Lupton is up there at 11.5 million. Trinidad is over 14 there with us, and so they get, a little bit more. Livingston, Montana is just up out of Bozeman, just north of Yellowstone Park. Gering, Nebraska. Anyway, I went out and I grabbed these numbers off their audit reports. So these are like actual numbers from there, right off their audit reports. And if you add those up and divide it by 7 cities I have to come up with an average, my purpose in that is that those 7 cities operate on an average of about a $9 million budget. Okay? And if you look at the categories up there, general government, public safety, what I wanted to do was take the average of that and compare it to our average to kind of see where we're over or under or where we're at compared to these seven cities. So there's a lot of assumptions here, I get that. And there's a lot of differences, but you go off to the far right variance, and with the formula I used, we are heavy by about $750,000 in public safety as compared to these other towns, and we're heavy to about $926,000 in recreation to these other towns. Now, whether these other towns have golf courses, whatever, I don't know. So I'm not saying, like, hey, this is exactly right, but I just wanted to compare to their average spending to ours. We are kind of heavy in this calculation in those two areas. Streets are pretty close, and where we're low compared to the others is within general government. And I'm not exactly sure what other cities classify as general government, so I can't say it's an apple-to-apple match there either. But it's just rough calculations to give you an idea. If we were to look at other cities, kind of where we fall, we are about 5 million more in expenses to the average, which a lot of it is the fifth penny and what we're over in the budget. And the categories, we spend more in public safety and recreation in those cities.
Can I ask, just because I don't know, when you say public safety, give me an example.
Public safety is gonna be the police, fire combined.
Okay,
Police, fire, the animal control.
Okay.
All those types of departments.
I should have assumed that.
Public works for us is gonna be like streets, it's gonna be the central shop, community development, those types of funds, we just kind of combine in together.
Is that every department within Public Works?
Yes,
So it'd have enterprise funds and all that in there
not the
also?
enterprise funds.
You
This is
subtracted
strictly
that?
general fund.
Okay, okay.
So it is public works, it's streets, community development, building maintenance that we
Okay.
have a department, it's all those. The ones on that slide earlier that were.
Blue and green.
Color green, they were green.
Blue and
in that
green.
one earlier. So all of those fit in, and
Okay.
so anyway, that's just informational, I think that's really good information to kind of see that kind of how we compare. The next slide, the main purpose that I wanted to share with you here is in the chart. We spend roughly 67% of our overall expenditure budget on salaries and benefits. Okay?
Can I ask you, is our self-insurance, is that still the way to go?
I have a bunch of slides in here to go over.
Okay,
The answer to that is, I believe it is not the way that we want to go, and I will show you why.
it used to be, but I know things have changed a lot. I just,
I've got some really good information and comparisons on the insurance fund that,
okay.
I think we need to make some real serious changes in that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share, is kind of how we break this out. Most organizations, their salaries and benefits are usually gonna creep up closer to 70%.
Yes.
So I think that we are kind of supply, purchase, service heavy a little bit. I wouldn't say by a long shot, but most organizations, we're gonna have salaries, benefits closer to the 70% range from what I've seen. Anyway, you can see the breakdown here again on that same slide between the OGCO salaries, benefits for the years. And you can see the difference between 21 and 24 that I showed on that other slide, where there is a variance of 2.9 million. We've increased from our spending of 10,700,000 to our budget now of 13.7. Just another way of showing it.
Wow.
Those benefits really
It's really increased sharply. The next slide, I just wanted to show you a little bit of the impact that inflation has had on the city. Inflation is gonna be part of those budgetary increases that we've increased. There is gonna be some inflation in that. That's just not, just spending more or whatever. Inflation is a part. It's not like a large part, but it should be included within the discussion. So the graph on the left, I forgot to put my source here, I'm sorry. This is from, It was a website. I need to put the source on here, because I didn't make
We
this
believe
up.
you.
I didn't make this up. It was from a source. I didn't create this graph myself. Okay?
From the Republican Party, from what I can tell. Because on TV, they say it's
So-
2.
So anyway, from February of '22 to February of '23, you look at the inflation, what's happened on the graph. It is an increase of about 7.69% average of those years, and it hit its peak in June, roughly May, June of last year of '22. That's where it hit its peak. And so just to show you what the impact of that is, I went out on our salary budget and I took every full-time employee that we had, this is just an estimate for this purpose, and our average salary on that. So if I add it all up, divide it by the number of employees, is about 53,475. That's basically our average salary. The inflationary effect of that is about $4,112. When you look
Over-
at that
Over 2 weeks?
over
A year.
Oh, a year.
That's over a year, sorry, that's
Okay.
right. So for a year, we get paid 26 paychecks a year throughout the city. What that amounts to is 2 paychecks, almost to the dollar, that employees have lost because of just inflation in their spending. And 2 checks is essentially a month. That's a house payment, car payment, food, insurance, everything that happens within a household. Inflation just ate up a complete month's worth of pay, is what it is.
Wow.
Okay? And so that's what I was trying to say in the narrative to the right there. But I do believe as we look forward, and I'm going to talk about this again, I think as part of the budget, we have to look at some of this, at least the cost of living, to some extent. Now, we're way upside down right now on our estimates. This is going to be very difficult. I totally agree with that. But I think we have to keep this within our mindset to know that our employees, this is the impact that they've had on their lives, okay? Not by choice, but by inflation. And so salary-wise, I'm gonna get to it here after a while, but I think as a city, we need to define a little bit where we wanna position ourselves in the marketplace as far as salaries. And we need to set goals to reach those goals, whatever those goals may be. I'm not saying what, I can have recommendations that we should position ourselves out there with salaries, but that's kind of a council decision. But I think sooner than later, we need to have those discussions to know where we want to position ourselves as a city in the marketplace. So that we can attract and retain really good employees. The next slide is one that we had in our workforce report. And the chart to the left is the general fund. You can see that overall we've increased about 8 positions since 2018. And if you go to the graph to the right, we included all funds, okay, enterprise, all of them. And you can see overall that we really have increased in the number of employees that we have. And I would urge, when we budget and look at this, with the additional employees that we had, we need to really look at the services that we provide with that to see, if those are essential services. I think it all needs to be added together.
So you're saying, like, on the number over here, the change is 8 people in the general fund? Okay, 8 employees. So over here on the graph, it shows close to 28 employees or so.
Yeah,
20
I-
employees, say. So
I
you're
think
saying,
it's just, what?
you're
what
saying
we
12 though are into an enterprise fund pretty much?
Well, there has been some added into enterprise. I believe one of these graphs have the authorized positions and the other have the actual. I think
Okay.
that's one of the differences between the two. Just know that we have increased staff significantly
20 positions overall
over time.
in a matter of almost
Between the ones we've added and the authorized positions.
from 2020 to 2023.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a sizable number, that's the message. All right, so anyway, revenues and expenses, and a lot of those things, general fund, I have shared with you kind of where we're at, and kind of what we need to look at budget-wise going forward. Now, the talk will naturally go to, can we use cash reserves? You know, to help us with this. Do we have to make these cuts, do all these things soon, or can we pull in some cash reserves and do a 2-3 year plan to help get there? So I have a slide for you here that shows our general fund cash reserves. And this is out of the cash reserves report that I shared with the council probably November timeframe, October, November timeframe that I shared. Anyway, our cash reserves increased significantly over this time, okay? And a lot of that is due to the wind projects that we had. There was large increases in sales tax that we had during that time that was not really spent during that time. And so a lot of this increased spending we had is that we had larger amounts in the bank, you know, from here. And so our cash reserves, and naturally what we did is we increased expenses kind of with that. But anyway, as of June of 21, that was the best numbers we had at the time. We just got to 21 audit. If you look at that, we have roughly $12 million of unassigned cash reserves. Now, if they are assigned reserves, that means that they are spoken for specific purposes. One of the largest categories under assigned in the general fund is the impact assistance funds. Okay, all of those are legally restricted to be spent in the manner outlined by impact assistance. Okay, so there are funds in those others that are assigned. But the unassigned ones are the ones that are, that are more open to discretionary spending. Kind of like as long as we stay within that, we're going to stay okay. So overall, we have roughly 26 million in reserves, but 12 of those, right off the audit report, are unassigned. The council can decide how to either expend those funds or to put those into cash reserves, or whatever the pleasure of the council is. That's what we're kind of held to.
Tom, how much of the assigned of that 12.6 was allocated out from the impact assistance, and is that already taken out of that? Because I know the prior council had allocated a bunch of that out last budget season.
Yeah, in this number here, as I recall, it's about 3 million that we were holding at that time. And I have impact assistance when we get back here, we're roughly holding 2 million today.
Okay.
So a lot of that was spent.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that 12 didn't, you know what I mean, have a bunch of stuff that's already assigned that we have to.
Yeah, but no, the assigned one, there is still some other things that are assigned.
Okay.
But the unassigned is basically what we have as uncommitted. That we can,
Okay, but if we have 12 million unassigned and we don't do anything with the budget and we stay where we're at and we're 3 million over every time, we've got 4 years and then we're out.
correct.
Yeah.
So we have to fix this, in my way of thinking, sooner than later. Don't do it
I
over,
agree.
we can't do it over a 4-year period, or we'll be out of money.
Well, if we continue to spend where we're at, it will not, yeah.
Right, but I mean, we need to fix it
No.
sooner than later.
Now, some items on this money that I just want to remind the council of is there's several areas that we talked about to move the unassigned either into assigned or different areas that we have some really desperate needs in that we can use that for. The box in the middle there, what we had talked about is we currently have an emergency reserve of $4 million. $4 million on a $14 million budget, you're getting down into the 20% range that we have emergency reserve. I would highly recommend that we look at least a 50% of our annual budget. And that's just what I would recommend. And if we were to do that, we would increase that from a 4 million, to a 7.2 million, which is roughly half of the budget or in that category. Okay, so we had talked about that. We had a discussion about funded depreciation, moving money into an account to help with future purchases of equipment. And if you look at the box to the far right, based upon financial depreciation, if you were to fund that at the different percentages, we would have to, the amount to fund is what we would have to put into there, okay? And this is based upon financial depreciation, not what I would consider funded depreciation, because we would not have to fund everything that's on that depreciation schedule right now.
So this would take out a lot of capital expenditures over the years of, hey, this department needs a vehicle now, or this department needs a backhoe now. It would already be funded in the funded depreciation.
that
We
set
just go
aside.
right,
Correct.
okay,
So
just
if we
so
were to
everybody's on the
take
same page.
4.7 million over into funded depreciation, anything on that schedule right now, we could pay 25% of the total cost out of there. We would have to find the other 75% somewhere else if we funded at 25. And if you go up higher, of course, the amount increases. The ultimate goal is to have it all funded, but that takes time and a plan to get there.
You have to start somewhere.
And we have to start somewhere, and right now, we literally
Or
have
zero.
none. We
None.
just do not do funded depreciation right now.
Just come fight for the money that we have for capital expenditure, and it's not,
Correct.
yeah.
Well, if you have something that it's gonna last
Yeah.
10 years, you have to replace, you're silly not to put 10% away
Yeah.
every year, so you have it. I mean,
Yep.
just that
No.
simple.
Now, in order for that to happen, there's several things that have to happen policy procedure-wise that is in here as well. I want to just touch on tonight.
Okay.
We have to change a lot of things to get to our mindsets into that. And I will show you within the ideas that I have in here to help us get there. We talked about infrastructure, which is the SCADA system, pretreatment water line, that we may have to pull out some fund reserves for. We talked about building maintenance. Our buildings right now are in serious need of maintenance. We can show you different things on about every building we own. It needs some serious maintenance on it. We talked about additional technology replacements, switches, different things that we have. I brought in a tech guy today that's gonna put in a quote for tech services so that we can contract out. We went around the city, 3 different places that we went. He looked at the server or whatever we had, and he kept looking, and he said, I haven't seen that in 20 years.
That's
He was
not a
kind of
good
like,
thing.
No, that's
I
not a
didn't know
good
that
thing.
they made, I mean, he was like making those comments, so
So he knows we're frugal.
he knows that we're frugal.
Well, that's
Sad.
one word for it.
Yeah, but there are, from what I saw today, some pretty serious needs. That's just the way we have
Yes.
to put it. One other thing that I feel like we should have added onto here that I've learned since I did this is we should put some money into a self-insurance for property, cars, and those types of insurance, because we are self-insured on most of our vehicles. And if we had accidents, or if we have different things that we need insurance or reserve, I think that should be in here that we did not put in there at the time. And I don't know where we would put that. We could put a couple $100,000 and then increase it over time, you know, according to a financial plan. But my overall point of this in a roundabout way here is even though we have $12 million in unreserved, we can essentially spend that to a penny on needs that we have. And so I would not really recommend that we prolong the deficit very long. Because if we do, these are the things that are sacrificing for that. Okay?
Tom, real quick on this infrastructure for SCADA and pre-treatment. Is that 2.8, that's just setting back for future needs, or is that setting for
One,
right now because we just got grants for a lot of that?
it is pretty close to right now, not completely. So on the SCADA, we got a CDBG grant since here for about $1 million. Our overall cost of that is going to be closer to 2, so we'll still have to find roughly $1 million. It'll be under that, but roughly $1 million for that. One of the needs we had here was, if I recall, at this point, was matching on like the water line that we were gonna have to pull some more funds for. And I can't remember exactly. I know that
The generator.
pre-treatment generator was one at the pre-treatment plant. We do not have a backup generator.
Well, in that SLIB grant that we were down there, we got roughly $1 million, but we matched it with $1 million, so that's $1
Yeah.
million of that.
Some of that was impact assistance.
Oh, okay.
You know, but you're right in that there's, I mean, if we had 23 million right now, we could spend it all out there. We just could. But we're gonna have some more immediate needs than long-term with this. And so that was our estimate back October, November, and I'm not sure it's as high now, but overall, we just need to know that our cash reserves are very valuable to us. And I just, you know, if we can fix a problem besides going into those, that's what I would recommend.
Tom, can we take a 15-minute break?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. So go to the doctor, my shoulder's great, but my hands fall asleep. So it's
It's great.
they're gonna put electrodes in each armpit and here, and then they'll test how long it takes for the electricity to go down, then they'll know whether it's my elbows or my neck.
They're gonna send me the code and I'm gonna go like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that done?
No, it would be fun to mess with you while you're up there.
It hurts really
It'd be over here
bad.
spasming everywhere. What's
What's he
wrong
doing?
with him?
You do too.
I'm gonna just kind of move back like,
Sit you in
what is
front of
wrong
the-
with this guy
Sit you in
tonight?
front of the piano.
Yeah, go, he's on. Sparkle
Well,
hands, here we go.
in science, did you ever take a frog leg and hook it to electricity, make a cake
Yeah,
and
I
stuff?
never tortured animals, I don't know.
Well, in biology, they
Biology, they made us do some weird
Yeah, I wasn't
stuff.
real
I did that
crazy
to
about that, but
Kid next to me.
He tortured humans, not
You
animals.
remember the crank generators, and they had a 32-volt one for if you lived out in the country, 12-volt in town and so forth? Well, I had a 32-volt one. I was so amazed I could crank that and light a light bulb. Well, I'm sitting in a chair and Larry's on the floor watching TV, mom and dad and the two sisters, and it's pretty quiet. Hey Larry, look. Hey Larry, look. You know, I told him about 10 times. I was just so amazed that that light bulb lit and he wouldn't look, and it made me mad, so I took the wires and I made it into a fork. And I started cranking as hard as I could. And I stuck it on the back of his neck. That was one time I was really glad Mom was home. I think she actually saved my life. But we would stand in a circle of 20, 30 people, and we'd make these big, huge rings of people holding hands. And with that 36-volt generator, you couldn't hang on. It was, I wish I had it now, darn it. I took some wire and put it in my sister's bed. Started
Oh my
cranking.
goodness.
Yeah.
What are you trying to bounce her out of the dang thing?
Yeah, I'd hear these 4 feet hit the ground, bump, 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 bump. And I'm in the closet cranking, so Mom opens the door. I don't know what you're doing.
That essentially means
My sister's filling the lake. Haven't come back home.
Come back, don't you?
Yeah, they both passed away, but the one was so nice, they don't come pay me. But he came out with that.
No.
That's what he said.
That's why I asked.
Right, so we have,
That's why he asked that.
Oh,
Oh, thank you.
No, Mom.
right,
Yeah, I'll take it in. Only, no, that was, 21.
Time with that, Jim.
That's what I had too. I was just reading that because said that. 2020, sorry, 2022.
No, he's not.
We were over one.
I was raising this girl. My dad would take me here to go out there and fix something.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, real quick question. So we're on the same, all on the same page. You said the 1.3 will fix the 1.9 from 2022, not 2023 to 2.6. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're in this year.
Yes.
Sure, I can do it.
And yes, this is what we're short. Is that number, right?
Right.
Yes. We're in fiscal year '23, so it would fix the fiscal year '23 budget.
Okay, okay.
That's
That's what I was
So it's
asking.
half a-
Yeah, so
it's about a $500,000.
So,
right?
so in the end, we're not gonna end up 1.9 million down. The hard part is when we budget for next year,
we won't have any.
do we, yeah, if you have it in there, and we get things down to a realistic amount,
You're not gonna have that
we're
again.
not gonna have it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or as
Okay.
bad.
Yeah,
Question for you. Do you have a breakdown of how you do overtime?
Good, busy.
Is there?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
And I don't know if this
I'm
was,
starting my garage.
but if we had,
I got my car.
I did notice that.
You know,
Washing it, I looked down the license plate not a month ago.
I think
I went and washed my truck and then, I drove down the alleys and everything else.
I don't know that.
3 lieutenants, 3
Mine expires.
sergeants,
Mine expires next month.
30.
11
Mine
or
expires
something
next month, but
officers.
the tags all like, it's almost like someone's trying to steal my damn tag. I'm dead serious, you have to look at that truck, it's all peeled off. Like,
The overtime here.
they don't peel very well.
You know, you
You're
look
right.
at that. Here's the difference between.
Yeah, you can't just throw them off.
See, and this is one of my frustrations that I wasn't there tonight, but between 20,
No, what you're supposed to do is pour
the police department.
Yeah, but a
Increase.
finger like she's doing it should just. not
I can
follow
tell
it.
you right now that
yeah, well, and that's what I was curious about. So if I do this number, I don't see it. You don't show the actual.
we had a $66,000 roughly budget for overtime.
We're just gonna have to correct it back.
Okay.
And so we just increased the budget to 66, and that's that today.
Okay, all right.
Because I don't know why the budget.
Yeah,
until
overall, man, basically.
last year, and I wanted to put it in here, but there are 5 different areas that when we cut the budget, we went to like, from what I can tell, it looked like the larger categories. We went and we just kind of say, cut this. So police overtime is $200,000. Repairs at the central shop, we're gonna do $160,000. And you think where else? All across the city, this is cut. And I think all that's an increase in fuel.
Over next month.
Yeah.
But all these different areas, we were way over budget. But even if you throw that in, there's still 1.4 budget, so it's like, I think. Police got told those for some of the budget was 66, and I don't know why.
That's what he said, bro. You live around these.
My brother and my brother.
See, I even got M&M's, just some good stuff.
I know.
So all the budget that we're short should be in salaries.
We got some healthy food and.
When I looked at that.
It's good.
And I have it
At
on
lunch.
salaries for the police department, instead of 75% spent, 3/4 of the year, it was like a 72. Now you have to think.
I was getting ready just to get out. I'm walking.
But when you do.
Good plan.
Those show up when it's in position.
Two didn't wait for me, and then on the way back, he said, get in the bus, I'll give you a ride back, because it was just so, I got to a point 2 times on the way out that I had to stop, because the wind was so fierce, I could not even move. Got back, I had to eat some chocolate, my sugar level was so low, I was like shaking, and I was like, I know I had these tonight, so I opened them up and got 2 of them, just to get my blood sugar out, because I was so expensive that meal. I mean,
He's already got it up.
I looked yesterday and it wasn't up, they must have put it up.
Well, we were gone Monday, so I picked it up Monday afternoon, and Debbie, they put it up already.
They didn't have it up yesterday, they must have put it up today,
Must have.
or late,
Yeah,
after I
they
was
picked it up
done.
about 4 o'clock.
That's the kind of thing
Yesterday,
you
because they were supposed to pick it up in the morning, I forgot, I had to go to Casper.
Holy crap.
Schedule
And,
is producing this.
What?
They are short. And this number's right. Here, even though the estimate, because we had 66 in there, and we had to increase it
Good, hopefully it
to 205,000, so I mean, that number's close.
So,
Don't break your neck.
Ever since I had back surgery, my coordination is just terrible.
Has nothing to do with age, I'm sure.
Yeah. No kidding, huh? Well, I was in actually pretty good shape, and then when I had that done, this leg here is just weird. I don't even know, sometimes like uneven surfaces.
Yeah.
I was born with club feet, so I don't have real good control over my feet anyway. They've hooked up all the tendons, but it's always been a thing. But walking on uneven surfaces like rocks and stuff, you'd swear I was drunk, man. I just can't.
Makes
do
it tough.
But strength is coming back. So that's
I think those are good calculations.
That looks like really
That's
healthy.
the way I think.
I'm telling you what.
I'm gonna take this though, because this is not healthy for you.
No, no,
And you
I
can
am.
keep the peanuts and the chocolate. but
Okay,
you
I'll be
cannot
right
have-
back. I see some more up there. I do a balanced diet. About 5 pounds in each hand.
Good fireman's banquet.
an equal
Do
amount.
what?
You guys missed the good fireman's banquet.
And you have
I know it.
I was driving to Nebraska.
Yeah, I knew you were.
I didn't get the notice until it was kind of late, and then Josh came, and
Yeah, it was good though.
Was it nice?
It was very nice.
Good.
And the food was really good.
Yeah, we've gone every other year, but this year we just didn't.
Close to Easter for me.
Oh golly, look at this, people live up north by my dome house. Look at these two pictures they sent. Cause I asked him, is your snow gone? He goes, I'll send you pictures.
Wasn't
Out
seeing
on the
it.
mine road.
Oh, Mineral X?
76, yeah. They're 2 miles from my dome house over the hill. I don't own it anymore, so look at this. That's what they have in their yard yet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna take a few weeks.
Yeah, I feel sorry for them in a way.
Mine's in my
They have
basement.
a truck that runs on wood, and they built their own wind generators, and they're just quite yeah,
I know a few people like that.
the wood-powered truck is, they live 20-some miles out of town, and like that garbage can, 3/4 full of wood, that's what it takes to drive in and back. You know, start it up, take them a few minutes, he'll get it going, and it's not
There we
real
go.
powerful, but it's a pretty cool idea.
Yep.
And they're just so inventive. They're
Probably have about a 3 foot of mud
You
you have
almost
to
went
deal
for
with
it.
once it all melts.
That's what they told me there. As it's melting now, the roads are actually rivers because there's nowhere for the water to go.
Yep.
And then it ices up, you know how that goes.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough to get through until they get.
Finally got it
Dried
off my
out.
patio. My son come down and did a lot of irrigating. Had little paths about that wide. We have this little hole. And now they're pretty much gone, but you went, gosh, it was 6 inches deep on our patio in certain places. And we dug it all mostly to where the garden's gonna go, but I got a greenhouse. It's 20 foot by 10 foot by 20 foot. And they delivered it, and Debbie and I were laughing because it goes in 3 foot of snow, you know. Anyway, I always wanted a greenhouse, and I said, I'm not gonna go another year without a greenhouse. So I ordered it.
here's what,
It's not the one I really wanted, but it's the one I really can afford, you know. But
this is what we.
I want one of them hard side ones and then put it on cement
That's not
and make a year-round one out of it, because I think a person could. Steve has one that's year-round,
Oh, yeah.
and I think a guy can do
So
the
you
same thing,
have
just,
2 things that they do
then I have one that I built out of
on him.
those coolers like City Market have, their milk coolers.
Yeah, but do we have that?
When they remodeled, I used to
You do, that's what you're spending
No.
money on.
I would go sleep
But
in
you
my
know what I
truck
mean.
and then they'd say, okay, we're ready, and then whatever panels they took out, I put in the truck, and that's how I got my big ice freezer at Candy Mountain, and then, but anyway, I had enough pieces left over to make like 3 sides of a greenhouse. And it
Maintaining
is
something.
4 foot by 12 foot,
70% of
but
the time. And then
like right now, I bet it's still probably 80 degrees in there.
Oh, that's
Because they have
good.
enough mass inside, you know.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you have 90% of the time?
You
insulation.
have to have a heater in it.
it can be assigned any way you
And
want.
then the problem becomes it gets too hot. So when it gets to a certain temperature, I have exhaust fans, which I made them out of from my old restaurant, exhaust fans over the hood, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to build a bigger greenhouse, but this one we just got in will be a real experiment. It'll let me learn what a bigger one's like, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay, I won't get it.
Phil's
Yeah, you should. You should, but the needs change.
no.
When you add what you want.
So from the standpoint of you have a recreation budget, your recreation. You have a recreation center, you got-
You know, as soon as they take a bite out of it.
No.
Lots of people don't walk, they don't.
You're born to die there.
So if you take off them, I don't get much. Entertainment.
Tom, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
You ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay. One last thing that I want to share with you on the general fund, and then we'll move on to some other funds. Is one of the areas that we receive charges for our services is in the recreation departments. And so I kind of wanted to share with you an income statement of sorts on the different departments within the recreation fund. So as you can see that the golf course and the clubhouse combined, when you combine those revenue percentages, our revenues make up about 30% of the expenses there. And overall, cash-wise, the net use of cash is about just under $500,000. The rec center shooting range combined is about 70,000, and their revenue percentage is about 16% combined. And then the green spaces does not really have a revenue source. That's where we do the parks and different things. So one of the areas that we will look at here as a possible thing with the budget is just increase the revenues a little bit. We'll see if we could draw up a good business plan. I think this is one area that we can improve revenue, at least in the different things that we do. But just so you know those percentages and what is at the rec center.
Can you tell me the number of employees for each? You have salaries. How many employees does that include?
I'd have to get that to you.
Is it back there?
Lynn will take a note here and I'll make sure I get that out to you.
But that doesn't have it at golf course, does it?
No, I think it's just.
Yeah, it has a combination.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
if you
be
give it
happy-
to me.
I'll be happy to
It's
do
four
that.
calls.
Hey Tom, real quick, obviously green spaces is zero because it's parks and stuff like that. So does the revenue from the
Okay.
permits or whatever and stuff like that from, say, music in the park, it goes underneath the rec center? Why don't it show under a park so it shows that that was made at that park? Just curiosity.
It's just a rec center function. It's the one that sponsors and puts it on,
Okay.
so the revenues go back.
I just wanted to make, you know what I mean, make
Yeah,
sure
I see what
that,
you're
yeah,
saying,
because it was
because
made
there's
at the park from that
Revenue on
park.
that park, but we're gonna recognize that as a rec center
Okay.
function.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
I can probably answer the staff if you want.
Yeah,
So staffing wise, I can give you full-time. I'm not sure this is full-time equivalent, so this may not include all the seasonals.
Okay.
And actually, you could refer to this page here.
Yeah, she showed me that.
And so, it's fairly accurate. So recreation, I believe we have 7. It's really 7 3/4. So
Seven-
7 full-time. and
7.75?
3/4 time for our daycare person. Golf is actually 3. I'm not sure where the 4 is. We have
There's one with table and then three underneath.
for golf.
Oh, golf.
So we have golf pro, golf superintendent, and assistant
Assistant.
superintendent. And then we have the part-time.
And this is just full-time staff, right?
Yeah, so full-time
Okay.
golf would be, golf and pro shop would be 3. Parks is 5.
That's green spaces.
Down from previous years. And then, yeah, and I guess that would be it.
So is your shooting range, is that included in the recreation center?
That's what, yeah, so that's.
7
right
for
there.
shooting, right?
And then they have a 3/4 on that one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
500.
And,
What was
okay.
the shooting range?
It's, shooting range is included in the 7.75, yeah, from the rec center. And obviously the golf course 3 is including the clubhouse.
Okay.
okay.
Oh, that's Sean.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep. The only thing remaining within the general fund that we haven't touched on is what we call the dangerous buildings fund and the housing funds. Okay, those are the only ones that we haven't touched on. And what, next slide there. And the only thing here really to report on this is that we are holding a combined between the two about $373,000 in cash. We've spent a little bit this year on the housing expenses, but we are essentially holding this as cash. A lot of this will go to the dilapidated buildings or those types of activities as council directs on that. So with that, we have concluded the general fund. Is there any questions, general fund related?
How much do we put into the dangerous building funds from the general fund annually, or,
We have not put any in there for a long time.
so recommendation going forward, are you recommending we put some in there somehow? I mean, if possible?
If we have some either unassigned cash reserves that we want to move into there, that would be a very good thing to do. If we want to put some operating in there, we're going to have to create some room for that transfer.
I'm just thinking for future, if we have grant matches and stuff like that for dilapidated buildings, that would should come out of this fund, correct?
Where this money came from was tearing stuff down and then selling the property. That's where I believe this money came from.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
I think in 2017, 18, we probably had about 500,000 in that account.
That don't mean we can't put some in.
Right, we can.
Yeah.
When we should.
Yeah,
It's an issue.
Exactly. That's where
If we
I'm thinking.
can, we should.
If we can, yeah, that's why I'm saying it. Okay, thank
These
you.
funds here, this fund balance here is included on the assigned fund balance currently in the general fund.
Okay,
But we can definitely move it from unassigned to assigned and put it here. Or we could look to raise funds essentially through the general fund.
okay.
All right, so that is everything general fund related. So in overall, we're gonna have to look at about 2.8 million that we're gonna have to look to create some space to balance the budget, and then if we look for salaries and other things, we're gonna have to dig a little more. So just kind of know that's where our starting point is when we start to budget. So
Where the wages are like, on the one graph was 50% roughly, and the benefits were another 25% or half of the wages. And I don't wanna be harsh to the employees, but that just seems like a very high ratio to me.
well, I believe if you look at
Right.
other cities, and this is just experience, not anything, usually that number's up about 70%.
What do you mean? Together?
Yeah, combined.
Okay.
But that could be, like I said, I just think we're a little heavy on the purchase services and supplies, is kind of what I'm saying. I think we're a little heavy on that. The more you would take out of that, the salaries and benefits percentage would increase. So it isn't so much that we should add money to it, but it's like percentage-wise of the overall budget, it's usually 70, close to that.
Okay.
And we're kind of in the mid-60s.
Okay. It just,
It
when I
does
look
seem
at that
high.
pie chart, it just bugs me that the part benefits is,
Yeah.
it's,
We're
As
gonna
big as
talk
riders.
about benefits here, though. I think we can make some good changes.
and I'm not one to really get rid of their benefits. I want them to
Yeah,
want to work here. It just seems odd that we're spending that much.
It's a lot.
I mean, You know, if I had a receipt for insurance or the same amount of money, I could go spend the amount of money the insurance, maybe I couldn't spend it or something, you know what I mean?
I do believe that the percentage combined is 70, but I think you'll find that the salaries portion is higher in those cities than what the benefits. I think the salary should be up over 50 and the benefits should come down
Okay.
a little bit, and we can still have the same benefits. It's not like we're cutting. We're just matching our spending closer.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I get into impact assistance fund, what I wanted to share with you right now to kind of break it up a little bit is what I have up here on the screen right now. What I have up here are all of the different modules within an accounting system and how they interact with each other. And what I want to share with you a little bit here is how does the city of Rawlins compare to this schedule? Okay? How do we compare to these interfaces? So the lines in there between the boxes are the interfaces. You enter it into payroll and it flows to the general ledger, okay? Right now, within the finance office with the system that we currently have, okay? If you start at the top up there, right, we have fixed assets. I can tell you right now, the finance office, through our accounting system, we do not track fixed assets through the accounting system. It's all on an Excel spreadsheet that the auditors keep, that I got from the auditors, and I now maintain it on Excel. Okay, we need to get into a fixed asset module, we have to. You look at the work order to the right, we do not use work orders. In any sense of the word, we do not use work orders, and that's how you track the equipment repairs that goes in. Before you open a work order, you have to tie it to a fixed asset you're doing the work on. There's internal controls. We don't use a work order system. You go to the left and it says inventory. We do not use a materials management inventory system in the finance office or throughout the city. We do not do inventories. You move down, our payroll is paper-driven, okay? We actually enter in. We do not employ a time and attendance system. If we did, there'd be an automatic interface into the payroll system, and there would be a natural flow right into the input sheet that we do data entry on.
Do the employees fill out their own time cards?
They do fill out their own time cards right now. And then they are forwarded to the finance office.
Learning a lot.
Human resources.
No, we were,
Human resources, we do not use really a human resources module. We do use an recruiting module right now that, you know, when you apply for a job, you can go through that. But as far as a true HR system, we do not use that. The employee files to the far right are all paper. They're not scanned into a system. They're in a file cabinet, you know, that we file. Grants and projects, we do not, you know, have a model, right, you know, a module right now to track grants or projects. Those are all tracked in Excel. Essentially, accounts payable, we should do a three-way match between the purchase order, the invoice, and the shipping documents. That way we know what was authorized, was billed, and it was also received. Once those three documents match, we pay. We currently pay the invoices, is what we do. We get some confirmation that things are received, and we always tie it to a purchase order, but we don't go line by line to make sure that everything's done. Purchase orders are paper-driven right now. Sometimes they could go to 9 different signatures or 9 different desks for signature. You know, purchasing, we don't have any centralized purchasing, that's all done at the department level. So what I'm trying to say with this overall thing isn't all of our faults. I'm not trying to point that out, even though it looks like it. What I'm trying to say here is we need to build a foundation that produces really solid financial stuff that originates in the finance office and it goes out to the rest of the world. Clear up to reports that the council gets. A lot of these reports now, I have to pull about 10 different reports out of Cassell to come up with this each month. We can get a system that'll automatically populate these things for us. And I think that a starting solution to the overall budget deficit that we have is we need to get business plans and we need to get an accounting foundation and a system that helps us, you know, to forward the information through internal control systems, a series of reviews. And I think that we will know a lot more where we're at budget-wise and what's happening with equipment, work orders, inventory. That's just how accounting systems work. And I think we're just, you know, at the stage to where we hit all of the major functions, but it's very paper-driven.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So in 2010, when I started at Sinclair, you're describing their system. Exactly. Now that we're HF Sinclair, we have programs for all that. And you're right, it's so much easier to press a button and you have a report. Plus, it keeps people accountable. You're accountable through all these systems, especially when it comes to purchasing or even work with the work orders. It is amazing to me that we're still in the 18th century instead of the 21st.
I was going to say, I've mentioned several times on the council floor about programs available to do this. And I know I mentioned Maximo first and foremost, right? Because I know what it would do. And it can kick out work orders and it tracks all that stuff. They do have, like, obviously you know this, being finance director, they have payroll places or things, paychecks, net checks, stuff like that you can log in and a time card on your phone and it tracks it, you know, all that stuff too. So, but as many times as, say, the work order situation has come up for purchasing and stuff like that, I thought that was being looked into prior. So
Well,
why is it not?
I believe.
And it's
that-
not your fault.
No, I
but
believe, from my thoughts, is what people think of as a work order system, what they envision is where departments can say, I have a need. You know, I need to fix this light. So they put it into a system and it goes to maintenance and they send a guy out to fix the light. What I'm talking work order system here
Okay.
is that when we work on a vehicle, you actually pull the vehicle up in the system, and the inventory module that we have in there, everything gets into there through purchase orders. So on the purchase order, you have a part number, an extension, a cost. Once you execute that purchase order, it automatically updates the inventory system for you. So all those items now show up in inventory. When you use a work order, okay, you go and pull it out of inventory, it shows up on the work order, the cost goes to that vehicle, and it actually updates inventory by taking it out. So the inventory system here is an automatic system. You really don't get in there to have to change the numbers unless you perform an actual inventory once or twice a year and the numbers don't match, you have to adjust.
that can happen through those programs, though, and
it
it
does
gives you
happen.
an ROI per se for what you're spending on a vehicle if your maintenance cost is 50,000. Why are we spending 50,000 when it should have been
That's
been
exactly
replaced?
what it shows,
Yes.
and it will flag once you hit a certain point
Yeah.
on a vehicle, as, you know, and so what we'll ask is do we really want to fix this vehicle?
Oh,
You know,
man.
because is it gonna come back next week?
Should have been done a long
So
time.
the 50,000 that you had listed previously for IT with these programs, is that part of that cost? At 50,000?
No. Are you talking to help this?
Yeah,
To
to buy
institute?
programs for this, it was,
The IT budget was for, what was for devices like computer replacements.
Hardware.
Hardware.
hardware, okay.
That's what that was, and for.
So
those
this would be
people.
out of what for the IT for this?
We would have to look at this to actually get a system. Right now, we use a system called Cassell. And for last year, it was included under the software in IT.
Okay.
We're gonna move these things now to the actual departments that use them, so that we know what it costs to run finance. Right now, it's under IT, we're gonna move those to like the finance budget out of
Okay.
IT. And so like the rec center software now is gonna get moved out of the IT software budget into the rec center so that we know more.
So they're reverting back to the old way of how it was, instead of like last year when we said, why is this getting moved out of here, out of the police department budget? Why is that getting moved out?
Yes.
And, oh, it needed to be under IT, this is going back under the actual budget it should
It
be.
didn't work, we're going back.
That's what I will do with the budget.
Thank you.
I feel that council needs to know what it costs to run a department with all the costs.
I would
Just
agree.
whatever it is, you need to know.
I would agree 100%, and I think that was talked about, honestly. I think I mentioned that myself last year, and yeah.
Well, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
go back to the actual department of origination.
So how many programs have you looked at? Are you going to do a bidding system or something to figure out which one works best for our city,
Well, first off, Cassell is what we use.
right?
And Cassell has made a lot of improvements in this direction. We just haven't followed suit with implementing those
You haven't paid for the updates and the additional,
correct for the modules. And so we've fallen behind on that system.
okay.
But I do know, talking to Cassell, that there's certain areas up here that they're not to yet. So
Okay.
we are looking at other systems. But we may come back with Cassell and say the advancements we have will get us there.
Or you might talk to Cassell if they can, if there's a program that they can, because sometimes you can have two separate programs, but they can talk to each other, right? You can combine them.
And so we're gonna look at that, but I know that there's really enhanced systems out there that we
There are
can
many.
implement that would be easier.
Better than
for
this,
me.
this?
Better than the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, and we have to follow this. I think the first step in fixing any budget is to make sure you have internal controls, a financial system that operates in this manner. Okay,
Thanks for the effort.
so that's kind of the intermediate thing that I wanted to share, but we're gonna enhance this a bunch. That's. All right. Under the Impact Assistance Fund, we had some interesting things here. So what I want to report to you tonight is within the current year that we're in, 2023, as of the end of February, we're holding about $2 million in Impact Assistance Funds still, okay? The 2023 budget in the middle box was 4.1 million, okay? And what we identified as projects, okay, came up at first it came up to 2,356,000. That was the original budget against the 4. We have added 800,000 in there, for the, that we've identified. 600 of that was change orders on the Sage Creek Basin Phase 1. We needed 600 in change orders that the council approved. 200,000 of that is gonna be design work on the SCADA system that we have. So the design work is spoken for here. The change orders are spoken for. 324,000 of this were purchases that were budgeted last fiscal year that did not come in until this fiscal year. So we rolled those forward. And then we also approved in the fall a ditch witch for the Public Works Department. So in the end, we have identified 3.5 million in projects where we had available budget of 4.1 million. Okay, does that make sense? And what the difference there is 595,000 that is remaining budget that has been approved by council to be spent, but we have not identified what we're gonna spend it on yet. So we haven't brought that to council to say,
Yes, sir.
can we get this or can we get this? So the current status of the cash that we're holding in the budget is that we still have remaining fiscal year budget of 595,000. Where it gets sticky here a little bit is if you look at the remaining cash that we have after these items are spent, okay, within the different funds to the right, cash-wise, right now, on the 2 million we're holding, we only have 239,000 available in cash. And we have 595 in budget. What happened there is that we have not received impact assistance funds this fiscal year from the state. They just have not been forwarded to us. So we put into our budget, impact assistance funds that we have not received.
Good.
So, what's
Are
that?
we expecting them still or no?
I don't know from the state, to be honest with you, what the status, I think they're being held up. Because I don't think the accounting, I don't think anybody's gotten any.
Is there
At some point, I believe that there's like a legal hurdle. Once the state gets over that, we'll get those funds, if they do. But right now, I'm not saying we can count on receiving those.
Well, and they have a cash flow situation too, where they might not be able to disperse them because they haven't collected them. I don't know,
That
but
could be.
the way they do the
Kinda like
impact assistance anymore is completely different than the way they used to.
Yeah.
And I don't like it, but we're stuck with it.
But anyway, we just have to watch and to make sure that we don't allocate over the cash that we're holding. That's what I'm trying to say here. And currently, we're not gonna put any more expenditures into here budget-wise until we know what the status is for next year. If the Choke Cherry project goes forward, that it looks like it may now, we can actually put some of those funds into here at a later point, where we can estimate those and we can allocate budget through a budget amendment into next fiscal year to spend that out.
At this point, I like allocating when we have them.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well-
mean? Instead of just predicting, allocate when we have them.
Well, and I think that, yeah, that's the approach I'd like to take.
Yeah.
And we can amend the budget as they become available, and that still is good. I want to help with those, look at the areas that, of the impact assistance that we have assets at the end of life. See if we can help with that, offset the impact of the additional workers and those things. So we will bring that The next slide is just kind of a income statement breaking out the revenues, expenses over the last 5 years, 6 years, that we've received from the different sources, the Chokecherry, TB Flats, Gateway West. You can see the revenues per year. And then you can also see down below the expenditures that we've made out of those different funds. The cash remaining in those funds is reported on the previous slide as to which source is holding how much cash. So you could go through, see that Chokecherry expenditures right now are about $1.8 million that we've spent of those in actual expenditures through Chokecherry. 143 Gateway West, Ecola, you can see where we spent
We
those.
have these in here,
What,
right?
what I always worry about, and I think some of it's true, is that because we've gotten the impact assistance every year for several years, some people look at it as steady income, and you spend them totally different. The impact assistance should be a one-time deal. You know, you should not be buying a pony for your grandkid kind of a deal. You spend the money, it's over. And it's been, I think it's been lumped into revenue. You know, we have that much revenue coming in, so we've increased our expenses, but not on a one-time basis, you know what I'm saying? Service items, operating instead of capital.
Very true, so anyway, that's the status of impact assistance. The next slide is our 6 penny or special purpose tax. Currently, as of the end of February, we're holding $2.8 million in that account. Interestingly enough, the current issue went in 2019. It was voted in. If you go back to the 2 previous issues of the 6 penny, we're still holding a little bit, some funds from those issues. And I can't tell you the exact issue or the dates, but the one previous to the 19 one, we're still holding $41,000 of that issue. And the one previous to that, we're holding $28,000 still. So there are funds of roughly $68,000 to $70,000 of previous issues that I think we should find a way to spend those out, clean those funds out.
If
Are we
if they
okay?
weren't spent on that project, it's my belief that you can spend it on the maintenance of that project,
Okay.
whatever those were. And so we need to identify what was on the ballot for the first one and second one. Use that money for the maintenance of those, whatever they were.
Whatever it is.
And I think that's the only legal way we can spend them, really.
That's what I was thinking too.
Well,
At one time, you couldn't spend it on maintenance, but if you have that extra when it's done, I think they changed it to where you can now.
But you can't roll that over to the next
No,
project,
you can't put
right?
it on something
That's what I
else.
was
It
wondering.
has to go
Yes,
back to
correct.
the original ballot.
To that project, whatever it was.
So
And
we
we're
need to
gonna look
figure
at
it
that, but we will budget for those to be spent when we present the first reading of the budget. All right, the next slide is specific purpose related. These are the projects that we have identified through the current issue of the 6 penny. And this was last year's 10-year plan, so this is kind of rolled forward, the estimates. But you can see per year what we've estimated to spend as it goes across to the grand total. One project is complete, the Walnut Street, at roughly 1.8 million. If you come all the way with these estimates across to the right and come down, you'll see the total allocation that we estimate is about 12,193,000. We have kind of over allocated projects on here of roughly 800,000. But when you go project by project here, the amounts up here have really changed. The raw water line from the cemetery to the golf course is $1 million on here. I know that the estimated cost for that now is like well over $3 million to do that same project. And so this is just an estimate as it was. We will update these things, you know, better, but I kind of wanted to show you the status of the projects that we're looking to budget for fiscal year '23.
And out of the 12 million, do you know how much we've collected so far, Tom?
Yes, if you go back to the previous slide, the overall revenues that we've collected on that, on the 6th penny on the far left, we've collected $4,851,000.
I see, okay.
And we spent $2,041,000, mostly Walnut Street.
So is it, I mean, just so I have this, we said the project, say the water line project for the cemetery is $1 million. We know it's well about 3 million estimated now, but is it still okay to collect that and still do that project at 3 million, or do we only get to allocate $1 million to that?
We are
You see what I'm
working
saying?
on that. It has to be what the ballot actually states.
We
And
can kick in the other 2 million to answer your question.
We can off
Yes.
of the 6 penny itself, or
No.
we can only use $1 million.
No, you're only gonna collect that 1 million.
Right.
For that project. So a lot of these projects are kind of null and void without us having a bunch of matching funds in a way.
we'll have to
That's
kick
why-
it, so.
When they didn't bond or whatever it's called,
Mm-hmm.
it made it harder because of inflation.
Well, bonding, it would be like, just so you know, bonding, and it'll probably come up again, but bonding would be in like, you went out and basically borrowed the 12 million, but you would only be paying interest on it as you drew it. In other words, you, out of that 12 million, you do a $1 million project, so you draw the 1 million, then you're paying interest on that until you pay it back. You're not paying interest on the whole 12 million. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then,
But
And-
you could have
and-
gotten all your projects done at once.
Yeah.
right, and I think
not
that,
had the inflation.
and I think what they
Yeah.
were worried about was getting all those projects done at once.
Yeah, I'm
And-
sure.
But they wouldn't have been paying interest on it anyway. They should have bonded. Long story short.
Is this
Shoulda, woulda,
a
coulda.
state
Yeah.
statute?
Huh?
State statute
What about?
regulating this?
Yes, every bit of it.
So is that something, I mean, I know, sorry, it's probably wrong time, but is that something we need to maybe look at a resolution to help out with that? Maybe
No.
we can present that, so they
No.
can change that?
No. I don't see how you could change it, Chris. Really, I mean, some towns
I think it's
should
good to
bond,
have the
some
option,
shouldn't bond.
yeah.
It just depends on your
No,
situation.
no, I'm not talking about the bonding, I'm talking about the way it can say inflation, we can't even spend but 1 million on this project out of those, but if they're regulated through the state statutes, why can't we put a resolution together to maybe get support on it?
Yeah, but
to
you're only gonna
allow
get
3
12 million to start with.
No, I know.
So if you spend 3 million out of there on that, then there's something for 2 million, don't
But
have
what-
anything.
What you're saying is we can only spend the 1 million is what I understood,
Right.
instead of the 3 million. So what I'm
No,
saying.
no, no, you get the 1 million. You can then add
Add.
to that.
Of your own money.
Correct.
What I'm saying is, with the inflation rate and stuff, why wouldn't you be able to use 3 million of your impact assistance to complete the highest priority projects? If that, I understand it's a state statute where you can't, but why wouldn't we want to possibly help, put that forth to the state to say, hey, look, we have inflation issues here. That's what I'm saying.
But what you're saying is spend 3 million on that and then go back to cut some of these other projects.
That
But
could
now you have
possibly-
just overridden every voter in the.
Yeah, no, and I understand, I get that, but it's somewhere, somehow
Yeah.
we gotta, you're never gonna get these projects done.
I couldn't agree more, but
But without some kind of leeway, you're not gonna get any project done,
sure we will.
so.
We'll get some of them.
It might be better to not have as many projects on the jacks, like maybe a couple projects, so your goal is a lot easier to acquire in that
When that
timeframe.
tax was passed, it was a 21-year period is what it was expected to be, meaning you
Yeah.
cannot pass another one for 21 years.
Oh.
Now,
Yeah.
we're collecting that ahead of schedule, but not a hell of a lot, but we are collecting it ahead of schedule. But when they passed it, it was like, this is what we want, that, okay, but 20, you can't ask for anything for 21 more years.
Yeah.
There's the problem. The first time that this was passed in the county, it was, well, when I was around, it wasn't the first time, but the one I was involved with was 30 million total. This one was 65 million,
Yeah, and the initial asks were like 92 million.
and
92
with
million.
that amount of 60, the larger number, it just stretched out to 21 years, where the one we did was 7 years, and it seemed like forever to pay that off to where we could get another bunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But 21 years, I don't know if I'd have done that. 21 years. You can't have nothing new for 21 years, you know,
Wait, unless, yeah.
that way, you know, with that method, that's just too long. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Okay, so that's the 6 penny specific purpose, and that's kind of the status and what we're looking budget-wise for next year. The last one, well, not quite the last ones yet, but I want to go through fairly quick our enterprise funds. And what you're gonna find here in the water and sewer fund is that there are some real definite trends that I'm gonna show you. And we are getting these funds that I would state into a critical state to where we're gonna have to do something with like the sewer rates, or something. So I will show you the status and kind of where we're headed in this. So what I did is I grabbed for the water fund first, everything that is 21 back is right out of the audit reports. 22 is what I penciled in as what the audit will show for this year, and 23 is the budget year that we're in. I took all of the information out of the budget and I put it into a financial statement form so that we can follow it through the 6 years. What I would like to point out on the balance sheet, basically, is what this is the, up one slide, is the unrestricted net position. Okay, what that is it compares to kind of the unrestricted general fund cash reserves. That kind of shows us what our net position is. It's basically unrestricted, okay, not as part of operations or as part of capital, kind of the extra. If you follow that from 2018, from 4.7 million, what you're gonna see is over the last 6 years, that number has dropped to a deficit balance, okay? So what has happened over those years is we have spent much more in the water fund than we have collected in rates. Okay, I mean, it's like a steady drop. The budget here is the amounts within the budget. I took the capital out, put it on the balance sheet, recognized depreciation on it, so it's like an accrual balance sheet. But as you could see overall, that number has really dropped to a deficit balance. If you look at the next slide, the changes in net position at the bottom are the operating losses that we have incurred. Those are losses in the water fund. Additional expenses over revenues. So as you can see, it has been a steady decline. Now, 2019 was an interesting year because the city as a whole in 19 took $2.9 million out of the general fund, water fund combined, and I think the water fund's portion, I think it was $500,000, and those funds were transferred to our self-insurance, health insurance fund to help build up reserves. Okay, that's where it went. When I look back into it, I'm like, 1.2
Out of the
million.
enterprise fund?
Is that what?
It was done out of the enterprise fund. And I should
Is
have
that
had the
allowed?
amount, but I believe the water fund transferred $500,000 to self-insurance.
It
Was
would-
that for their staff only?
No, I believe the intent, and I don't know, but the intent would be to build up reserves in self-insurance, because all of the insurance that was due, you know, on the benefit portion was expensed over to the fund. These are additional funds. And I will show you in the self-insurance fund where that hits in there. Okay, where it comes in. But it's like $500,000 water, it's like 300,000 sewer.
It's not legal, is it?
It is, you just cannot transfer it back.
Well, no, wait a minute though. You can't, I thought you couldn't take money out of the enterprise fund to support anything but that enterprise.
You cannot transfer it to the general fund to help support general fund, but as a proprietary fund, you can move it over into another
Oh my
proprietary.
gosh.
Water can support sewer, but
Okay, I see.
water cannot support general.
Okay, I get it. I'm
So
sorry.
what happened was that was an operating transfer that went into self-insurance. From what I can see, it was to build the reserves in self-insurance so that the insurance fund didn't go into a deficit position.
So it'd be looked at as that was used for their employees, ultimately, you could,
It would be
Okay.
for future uses.
yeah, of their employees,
Yes,
the
that's
enterprise
the best
funds,
way to look
yes,
at it.
okay, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Would that have been something the council had to vote on?
I'm quite sure.
It would probably be underneath the budget itself.
You were here.
We
Don't
can-
you remember?
Well, no, I started in,
Yeah.
Well,
We'll pull the resolution.
When they do a lot of this stuff, there's optical illusions that always take place.
yeah.
And since I've been here, there've been an inch of paper slapped in front of you, and you have to vote tonight. That's how that stuff happens.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
it's
it
probably
was,
in the budget.
it was about 2.9 million that was transferred in.
What year
And
was
what
that?
I'm gonna show is that the reserves, I believe, were sufficient
That's your last year.
previous to that,
But we
will-
can't take the 2.9 million from insurance and put it into the water.
That's right. I don't believe you can transfer that back.
That's not
I
allowed
think once
legally.
it's there, it's there. That it's moved, and now that's the purpose that we be spending it.
Okay.
But it was for support self-insurance
Yeah.
to help build up the reserves. So what I will show you back here is we had like $500,000 in reserves. And I believe that the way that the claims are going on the insurance is that it was gonna take the reserves into a deficit. So we made the transfer to build the reserves so that it over time go down. But what's gonna happen, I'll show you back here, is that reserves continue to climb.
I wouldn't have done it.
That insurance is strictly for the employees?
Correct.
Nothing else? No,
Correct. It's
no
health
other,
insurance for
okay.
the employees.
But that money that was transferred in over there is only, in reality, could only be capable of being used for their employees for future,
It's for health insurance for the employees.
for them, for their employees of the enterprise fund. That's how that would have to be. So that amount sent there is only able, say, you said water fund, it's only able to be used on the employees of the water fund.
All of the other
ultimately.
funds also were part of that overall transfer as well, but yes,
It could be used for anything.
but it is in the health insurance fund.
Because it goes into that, it goes into that other self-insurance plan, and general fund also puts money into that too.
Yes.
And it's not divided separately.
No, no,
Yeah,
but
but
that's
the-
the intent of it, to be
That's the
used
intent.
for their employees.
That's what we call.
That's how
the
you get
international
legalities out of it.
It's called a weak excuse.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Technical
anyway,
term.
you can see the changes in net position. And the budget year 23 is really large, and the reason for that, a lot of that is gonna be pretreatment
Yeah.
plant expenditures to get the pretreatment going. That really put us into a deficit position.
We just raised the rates. Do you anticipate?
I'm
Oh,
gonna show you that here, but yes.
And that, does that include also the 600,000 or so that was allocated out of general funds for that
It
also?
does not, that's up on the balance sheet,
Okay,
so it's not recognized as a transfer on here.
okay.
It's a liability to the general fund. It's on the other one for the balance.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I know budget-wise, within the water fund, cash-wise, we were looking at, we were looking at $1.1 million going down in cash. The reason this is 1.9 is you have to add in the non-cash depreciation as a loss. And that goes into the funded depreciation that our system is aging and we're not, you know, have sufficient revenue. So it's an actual accounting loss. Okay, the next slide on here is just our budget versus actual, like I showed in the general fund. And so right now, at this point in time, if you go from the end of February, which is 2/3 of the year, there's roughly 800,000 in there of budget that really should have been spent at that point if we're on a calendar year, if everything is spent equally. So the water fund may have some funds in there budgeted that will not be spent, is what I'm trying to say in that. And so we will monitor that closer as we go. I have for you here 4 graphs, and this will show the trends that we have. So the upper left, what I have in there is our unrestricted net position, okay, which is like the funds available in the net position, cash reserves. And then I also have our current assets, which is like actual cash in the bank and receivables. And you can see over the 6 years that they really dropped substantially. And so I just want to show that there is a trend starting to form, and this year we would actually go into a deficit position cash-wise and net position-wise. So we have increased rates within the water, and I'm going to show you that impact here. But I wanted to show that. The bottom left is an accounting ratio that we call our current ratio. What that is our current assets divided by our current liabilities. This is a factor of if we can pay our bills. The higher it is, the more money you have to pay your bills. As it goes down, you have less resources to match your liabilities. You can see that our current ratio is also dropping substantially over 6 years. In the upper right is the one that alarms me the most, personally. But if you look at the accumulated depreciation of our infrastructure, pipeline, everything that is water-related assets, capital, the blue line is our accumulated depreciation. And so what that is over time we depreciate assets and they're worth less. And the amount that, you know, that it's less, we recognize as an expense. Well, you can see by the blue line there that the accumulated depreciation continues to go up. The orange line is our ability to replace it. Okay, that's the actual cash on hand, the resources that we have. You can see that it is getting wider, that gap. So we are not putting funds away to help with future maintenance of the water line. And in a perfect world, it's just one line. The orange line would be equal with the blue because you would have the funds as it ages to get it replaced. At the end of the lifetime, you got the money to replace it.
I thought that water rate increase study showed that we would be there.
The water rate that I'm going to show here in a minute, but the water rate study was done with the intent that the rates would increase enough that we could start to build, you know, those resources. So over a 20-year plan, we gave them like a 20-year maintenance plan, and that was built into the rates. But what we are finding is the restrictions that we're on is lowering revenue to the point we can hardly balance the water fund cash-wise.
Even with our rating?
Even with the rate increase, we're
Well,
gonna be
but
hard
We had
pressed.
asked, actually,
But like in the summertime, see, my water bill run about 300 a
Yeah.
month. This last summer it was 100. And so it's kind of what everybody's did. And remember, we were asking about that revenue.
Yeah.
we had talked about
Was
that,
that
yeah.
anticipated in there? And the answer was yes, we've calculated it, and obviously
We didn't.
we didn't, but.
Yeah. So we're still in a very sensitive position, even with the rate increases. Once we get off the restrictions and we sell water again, we're gonna come back up. But right now, I have a revenue estimate that I will share with you as to how I will project revenues next year. But I feel right now that we're gonna be hard pressed to balance the water fund, even with that. And the reason is the restrictions have dropped revenue substantially.
So what are
They're
you,
still gonna be down this next summer, even if we do get to go to 2 days.
what are you anticipating? Cause, I mean, if we're in the negative, obviously, we have to subsidize, that fund. So what are you anticipating at this point in time that we're gonna have to subsidize? Cause that comes out of the general fund. And we're, already looking at a $2.6 million deficit. So what are we looking at now?
So
5, 10?
My budget for next year, just from my standpoint on a budget basis, which is cash, not true expenditures. Because you're gonna have your non-cash expenditure of depreciation. I believe that cash-wise, we can match expenditures with revenue. Okay, so we would not have to subsidize based on that.
Okay.
But capital-wise, aging system, we're falling another year behind.
We would not be able to fund the depreciation,
Exactly.
is what you're saying.
Correct. Right now, we're
How do you
not.
catch it?
So, well,
You
Once
catch,
the water
By the
sales
time we're
pick
done,
up,
we might
we
have a whole
will.
new system.
And so
we might not catch it enough to get a new system at this rate.
but what I am concerned of is when we get the loan payment from USDA for the water line for the overall project, we're gonna have to sell as much water as we can to have enough to help make that loan payment. And then, once we do, and it starts to build, at that point, we can rebuild funded depreciation. So I think the future, if we can get off these restrictions, and if we can start selling every ounce of water we can, it helps. And so,
we'll be
I'm not-
fine if we can
yeah.
do that.
and that's what we're looking at, but
Is some of the loan forgivable at the end? Sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt, but is I don't want to predict that and say, this is what
so
we
what
have, but that might be like
Yeah.
what we have to pray for.
What we are looking at right now is a couple different funding sources. We're just too early in the process to know, but the
Okay.
drinking water grant fund that we get is forgivable up to like 66% of it. 2/3 of it could be forgivable in the end. And I believe that we will qualify for that. I don't know if it would be enough to do our project. So what we're doing at the same time is we're looking at the USDA, which is a loan that has an interest rate on it. And I believe that we will in the end, blend those two together as a source as it is necessary, but we'd want to max out the drinking water part of that, obviously, because that's forgivable.
And I was reading in the news where Wyoming's getting 92 billion dollars, one of the two, I can't remember, for drinking water.
It's a lot.
Maybe that'll save us.
Yeah, and they have added to the drinking water fund. There is substantial funds there.
This was a new program that was just announced not too long ago. Do you know anything about it, Pam?
Yeah, we started talking about it in the water committee.
So what do you know about it? Is it a,
It's a drinking water, it's a DWSRF, so if there's a potential, like Tom was saying, that there would be forgiveness, 66%, 60 to 60.
so when's that program gonna get kicked off, do you know?
Well, it adds to the 250 million they already have in that.
Okay, I get it, okay.
Yeah.
They're adding in to the
Okay,
existing.
okay, I get
Yeah,
it.
and we will definitely apply for that. But we are working on USDA at the same time.
Sure.
Because I believe in the end, it's going to be a combination of the two.
When the water increase was passed, wasn't a lot of that, the numbers that he gave, the projections that he gave, was also based on like a 3% increase every year?
Correct.
Is that part of your,
I don't remember, he had like 3, 4, 5% increase each year.
Yeah.
It was a certain percentage that he would increase. And he also increased the expenditures for inflation like 4%.
so is that 3% revenue increase included in your numbers here?
It is not yet.
Okay.
Well, this is just current rates. Okay, so the bottom right graph there, the orange is our expenses, the blue is the revenue. So you can see we've been operating in a deficit using our cash reserves. What is interesting is you go back to 2018, we're just under 2.5 million in sales. At the height of our water restrictions, you can see it dropped to about 1.8. So during that time, you can see that we've lost roughly 500,000 to 600,000 because of restrictions over time through last year. And so it is just dire that we sell every drop of water that we can this year.
Gotta get off them restrictions.
That's what we're looking at. And we are working on pretreatment, and that is a huge thing with, with restrictions to at least go to 2 nights, maybe 3 nights at best. If that does not get up and going, it kind of leaves us where we were at the end of last year. And so we're working out everything that we can, trust me. We're gonna look at every option to sell every gallon of water that we can. Raw water through construction, everything that we can do, it's just essential that we do that. We just can't waste, not waste, but that's what has to happen. If not, we're gonna be transferring general fund money over to balance this, and the whole key is we gotta get the pipeline project fixed. We've gotta get off the restrictions.
You gotta hope at the same time that people that have lost their turf and stuff like that don't just say, I'm zero-scaping, and we lose it forever.
Well, and then we lose it forever.
Yeah.
A lot of them will come back. There's been a few wells drilled around, like a couple on Cherokee Road that I know of that were on city water, and now they have their own wells and such like that, but percentage-wise, pretty minuscule.
Yeah. Okay. This slide that you have up in front of you now Everything in black are actual numbers. So I pulled up every month's revenue back to 2017. Everything in black is actual, okay? It goes right to our general ledger. Everything in red are my estimates for the future, okay? And what I want to show you real quick is the logic behind my estimates, okay? And this is something we can adjust, we can do whatever. These are my thoughts for right now. So for November, December, January, February of 2023, those 4 months, we had the water rate increase included in the billing. Okay, so those are the amounts that were actually billed with the water rate increase included, okay? Those 4 months. You go back to 2022 and compare those, okay, to 2022, what you're gonna find is the 2023 numbers are between 61 and 65% increases in those years. That's what we're running to date, is about a 63% increase in the revenue based on the rates. So what I did is I went back to 2022 and I maintained 6.2% for March, April, May, and June. I just kept that the same. Now, if we get off the restrictions, June may be a little bit higher than what it is, but for right now, I just maintain the same percentage, okay? You move up to July, August, September, and October, and if we can increase, or if we can get the restrictions to 2 nights a week, is kind of what I thought, we could increase that percentage from 62% to 82% increase. Because we're also gonna include the 1,000 gallons up, to 342 per thousand is an increase. So the more we use for irrigation, it should go up a little bit. So I increased it to 82% for those months, July through October, and then from January through May, I went at a 1.2% increase because we already have the increase from the year before in there. That's just how I estimated it to date. That comes to $3,179,000. And magically, on the next page, that balances out our expenditure budget. So for next year, with those estimates and the logic I used, it matches the ask that we got from the water department on the budget. But that is cash-wise. That balances us cash. Dollar for dollar, we will balance. But the entire depreciation is lost for now.
So I just want to make sure you increase the water usage in January, February to come up with that number, obviously, but those are winter months, and I myself believe we'll be straight across the board, 23 and 24. So I think, because those rate increases were in there, and so I honestly think that where you're 199 on January, 196 on February, my thought is we'll be in the same boat and not $40,000 more, 45.
Well, but the July, August, September, October numbers of 2023 do not include the increase yet.
But January and February do, is what I'm saying. So January, February 2023, you got 199 and then 196.
Correct, those
And
are
then-
actual.
But we didn't pass it till March, right?
There's 4 months in there, so it's November, December, January, February have the increase, and those are actuals.
Yeah, so you're thinking you're gonna increase the revenue by $45,000 in January and 40,000 right there in February. You see where I'm saying? Where in March, April, they're close, 40 in April. I honestly think if you're in the winter months, you're not gonna increase the usage as like that, it's gonna be about the base same because the rate increase is, it don't go up 3%, it stays the same.
Yeah, so I was trying, I don't know what that percent, oh wait, I'm still looking at July, I'm sorry. So the January goes from 199 to 244.
And we already had the rate increase in this January, you see what I'm saying, and the water
That is pretty
usage.
aggressive.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's
And
aggressive.
same with the February where we're, my opinion is we're base across the board. It's
Yeah.
winter time. You're not watering
Yeah,
anything
those
or
are
any.
large. Those are,
I,
yeah, this is pretty aggressive.
I'd rather see it be pretty baseline across there, to be honest with you, in my aspect of things.
I'll relook at that. I wanted to be somewhat aggressive here to balance the budget or to kind of
Yeah,
show.
no, and I understand that, but when we start looking at being aggressive, I think the more aggressiveness has to come from the summer months, and knowing we hopefully can get off the water restrictions, we can get that aggressiveness.
'Cause those should
If
be
not,
close.
yeah, if not, I mean, the truth is, we're gonna have to subsidize it. I'd rather see it in front of my face than, like that, than, you know, what you see what I'm saying, Tom?
Yeah,
I mean.
I get exactly, I see that.
Yeah.
And I agree, that was pretty aggressive.
Okay.
Probably too aggressive, budgeting. Yep, we got that down and we'll look at that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Real quick, I don't want to spend a lot of time. I have the same information for the sewer fund. The sewer fund right now is in a worse position than the water fund because we do not have the rates right now increased to sustain the increase in cost. So we are, again, looking at the unrestricted net position. It reaches its peak in 2020. We have 800-some thousand in the unrestricted, but the last few years, it has really dropped off. Okay? Costs have increased. We've increased salaries. We've increased these different things. We have not increased the water rates. And so our unrestricted net position is falling quickly. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we actually made some money net income in 18, 19, 20. And in 21, 22, 23, you can see we are on a downward trend of that, to the point that we are very close to having to subsidize the sewer fund. So we're gonna have to come up with rate increases, or we're gonna have to do something on the expenditure side to cut back, obviously.
I thought the sewer, one was hooked to the water fund, in other words,
It is. So on the commercial side, not the individual.
oh, okay.
Commercial side, it's hooked to water usage.
Okay,
And on one of the slides here, you can see that during the restrictions, we probably lost 100,000 of revenue in the sewer fund because of the usage of the water dropped. And so it dropped also. So restrictions hurt the sewer fund by that dropping, and that's helped add to our net.
because I know in my
position
shop and
deficit.
stuff, it was hooked right to the water. Because you got a gallon, you gave up a gallon or whatever.
Yeah, and so we're gonna have to do something in the sewer fund quickly. All right, these are the same four graphs, and I think it looks almost identical to the water. So you can see in the upper left, the current assets, unrestricted net position has dropped to a deficit position on a downward trend. The current ratio is also dropping fast, which means we don't have the resources to keep paying our bills. It's getting tighter and tighter as it drops. Funded depreciation, you can see a large gap between our current resources and our accumulated depreciation. And that gap right now each year is getting bigger and bigger. And then down below, you can see that expenditures that were budgeted in '23 overtook the revenue finally you know, through 2023. We have not budgeted 2024. You can see the blue line in the bottom right graph. You can see the overall dip there in 22 in revenue. That's because of the water restrictions. So our revenues have dropped, expenditures are really climbing, and we don't have the current resources to even start to replace the infrastructure that we have. And so we have to do something to turn this around quickly. Sewer revenues, I budgeted this, the same as the water. I do believe if we get off these restrictions that we can increase the sewer revenue, 20,000 off of that is my guess. So that's how we budgeted the overall revenue. We will come up with the expenditures with that and show you all those with, the first draft. All right, the landfill fund is one that was in a deficit position. And I don't know if it was rate increases, I wasn't here, but you can see that our unrestricted net position went from a deficit, and it actually is growing out of that deficit to 1.137 million. One caveat in the landfill is we entered into a couple leases for equipment. You're gonna see that start to come down a little bit again. Not a lot, but it is gonna start to drop. But if there's two funds that are in a lot better position, it's landfill and the recycling. I think we're in a lot better position here, and we have brought ourselves out of the hole in that to where we are in a better position. And that's kind of all the landfill that I kind of wanted to show. Recycling, we had the increase there from $3 to $6. And you can see the unrestricted net position there. It dropped from 93,000 to 13,000. So it was kind of on a steady fall. But the increase that we made in there will bring that on a upward trend. There again, we have purchased a couple assets there, a compactor, a few things. We'll have to see how that impacts the bottom line. But for right now, I think the recycling is in a good position. Landfill, I think, is in an okay position.
That building they're building for the recycling center to hold the stuff, is that charged to the recycling center, or is that some other
Impact
capital?
assistance.
Okay, okay.
Is what that is, but there is a
I thought
compactor.
the compactor was impact also, correct?
It might be, well, I don't remember. I think it was impact, and the cement with it is impact. And so, but there were a couple assets in recycling. I cannot remember what we bought, but it
I
is
can't either,
gonna,
but I can
we are gonna come up, but it's not gonna come up, a lot. It is gonna kind of, with those assets purchased.
Tom, is there something that you can show here where we started shipping full loads of cardboard? Because that's our highest revenue item. Is there something you could show that shows an increase from the partial load of recycling to the full load of recycling?
We can do that. I know that we have some aluminum that we're holding until the price comes up.
Mhm.
And so I know revenues will spike a little more, but we will look that up on the cardboard.
That was some of the reasoning behind building the building that we have, so we can store it and, ship a full load at a time when the commodity prices are higher.
You get about 30% more, Tanya, for single loads, like a whole load of cardboard versus a mixed load of glass, plastic, and that. And that's why we agreed to build that building, so we can have full semis of single products. I think
It's the same thing with metal.
Yeah, it'll pay off really well, I think.
Okay, real quickly now I want to shift to the self-insurance fund. Okay? And I've got some ideas here, and I think what we're trying to accomplish here, we're gonna have to shift a few things to reach that, okay? So, the self-insurance fund in 2018 was holding in cash $582,000, okay? All of that came from insurance premiums that employees paid into it. Okay, there were the current liabilities in here are what we call claims incurred but not reported. So we have to estimate what claims are out there at the end of June that haven't made their way through the cycle to be paid. But anyway, our unrestricted net position was about 481,000. 2019, we transferred the 2,950,000 into there. So it increased the unrestricted to 3.4. And as you can see, between there and 2022, we've increased it another $600,000. So currently, in the self-insurance fund, we're sitting on about 4.2 million in reserves. Okay? Now, if you look at the next page, you can see the changes in net position down there. Every year we've had an income in this fund. We've actually raised money. Premiums are higher than the claims. 2022 was COVID. In 21, we really should have seen losses in here if we had it budgeted right, because claims went way up. But what we are charging in employees right now, or taking out of the general fund, more than covered the COVID years, and we've actually had profits in here each year, or increases in cash reserves. So what I thought at this point, what came to my mind was, what are we charging employees or the general fund? And yeah, what is that? Because it has to be a really high amount in order to cover this. So if you flip to the next slide, I went out and I came up with the numbers that we have for the budget that we have, okay? So general fund, or within the insurance fund, we offer 4 different categories: family, employee spouse, employee child, and single coverage. So we have 37.5 employees charged to family general fund. We charge $31,428 per family coverage that we transfer out of the general fund to insurance for their health insurance. Okay? So overall, it's $2,029,000 that we transfer, and the enterprise funds combined is about $364,000 per year. So when I look at with these amounts, we are creating an increase in cash in that fund. The cost per individual is to the right, okay? 31,000 family, 24 family spouse, as you can see. Now, I went out and I compared us to the school district here in Carbon County 1. The Wyoming Education Association puts out all salary information for every school district in the state. And they have health insurance, salaries, they have everything out there. So I went out and grabbed the amounts that the school district pays per family, and all those on a $1,500 deductible plan. Ours is much, much higher than that for a deductible, okay? We're not going to use our insurance as much as the school district because theirs is a lot more accessible, I guess you could say. Because of cost. A $1,500 deductible, you've reached it, ours is higher than that, so like I said, we have to save more to use the insurance. So I went out to the WEA report, and you can see the Plan 3 there is a $1,500 deductible. The reason I know that is Johnson County is below, and that's where I left the school district when I left them. This is where they were, so I compared the plans. You drop in the district match into the same numbers, and we would come out $745,000 that we could keep in the general fund and not have to transfer to insurance, and we would be in a insurance plan that we could choose 2 or 3 different plans in a trust.
$750,000.
$750,000
A year.
a million. If we used school district rates, which I don't know if we could get
Yeah.
there, there's a lot of unknowns, but if we just drop it into what they match at the school district here, we could keep $745,000 in the general fund and not have to transfer that to the insurance fund.
And you would be able to use the insurance fund to pay from what is in there currently, to pay our portion of the insurance. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, so I think what we would do now, if we were to make a move like this, if we were, okay, we would pay into the trust for coverage, and they have like 10 different plans to pick from. What I would recommend that we set up is a high deductible plan that costs a lot less, and employees can put money into an HSA, okay? The Plan 3 up here is a richer plan, and there's no HSA associated with it. So it's a richer plan in the eyes of the government, so you cannot put money into an HSA. I think we devise 3 different plans, and over time subsidize the $4 million that we have over there, pay for the insurance, for the employees, subsidize the insurance, and start to draw that $4 million down and get insurance at a lot lower cost to the city. And it's a lot lower deductible, or if you're healthy, you can have an HSA, where right now we don't have an HSA associated with it.
So would that eliminate the transfer of money from enterprise funds for employees?
Correct.
You see what I'm saying, into the healthcare?
We would actually pay the insurance trust for the premium. We would not pay the insurance fund out of the general or the enterprise. We would actually pay it directly to the trust.
That would solve.
Through the self-insurance fund.
No, we don't even have to use the self-insurance fund anymore. It's just an expense
Draw down what we
to
have
the
in
city. But we need to devise a plan so that we can use those reserves, because there's $4 million sitting there. I think we have to find a way to subsidize health insurance through that fund. So if we have to pay part of the premium through the self-insurance, we can.
Have you heard anything from the employees about how they feel about a change in their insurance? Are they wanting, like, the health savings account, are they wanting something cheaper but the same benefits?
We've not really heard that I know
Just
of.
an initial thoughts, just because of the budget, so we really haven't taken it out for.
But if you have any employees complain, or
Had a-
potential employees seem a little disappointed about our insurance plans?
I've had a few come in, but I wouldn't say an overwhelming amount,
Okay.
because most of them are very grateful that it's paid for through the city. So that's something they're very grateful for as a benefit. But I have had some come in and say they wish they had a more robust plan, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there are some, I don't know, I think it would be something we do need to explore, but definitely the cost savings is a huge thing to look at also on the flip side.
Tom, what is our cap before our secondary insurance kicks in to pay on stuff? You see, you know what I'm
Stop
saying?
loss.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good stop loss. I believe it's around 100,000.
Okay.
Which is really good. I'm really impressed because at Johnson County, I wanted to go self-insured. We couldn't find stop loss coverage that was affordable.
So at 100,000, we're good with that. I mean,
think
yeah.
each year though, it will cost more for that stop loss.
Okay.
But I don't think that's an issue right now. I mean, it's not prohibitive, the stop loss. I was really surprised.
Okay.
And I think we've had 4 laser claims.
Yeah, I think there's only.
4 laser claims, which means that we know they're gonna hit the cap, so we kind of.
Rep it.
At the county that was self-employed, and then they let, like senior services join and the library, a lot of people that should not have been on the county plan, and a lot of the, laser things that were, I think it was like 80% of them were not employees.
Oh, they
And
were
so they were bankrupting the thing. And we were getting, I don't remember, it was peanuts from the employees. And then shortly after I left, they changed that to where it was a very high deductible, I think 5,000 deductible and so much a month. And I had a lot of the single ladies that worked at the county that had children come to me, and they really couldn't even afford the insurance, and then they worked it all out. But there's all these different plans and levels, and it's so confusing to me. It isn't funny, but the self-insurance thing, man, it's scary, kinda.
Well, it is scary, but if you look at it, if you're healthy and you really don't need a doctor, right now, family-wise, we're paying $32,000 for you.
Right.
For insurance, and you're healthy and you're not going to a doctor, it's gone.
Yeah.
And if you have a higher deductible like the 5,000, we can put money into an HSA plan for you. In 4 or 5 years, you have that 5,000 in your HSA, and if you break a leg, you've got it in your HSA and you have already covered that deductible.
I see.
You could almost, at that rate, you could almost lure and it sounds horrible to say it that way, but lure them into an HSA by adding money to it for them.
Well,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
And that
Yes.
works. And that's what we did at Johnson County. We offered a middle plan. Well, what we did there is if you got on the health insurance plan, you had a certain amount of money for benefits to spend.
Mhm.
And the middle plan was fully covered. Okay, so if you took your 22,000 and you said, I want that family plan, okay, it was fully covered. If you wanted the $3,500 deductible high high deductible HSA, you got the 22,000 to put in, but your premium was only 20,000. The other 2 went into your HSA.
It makes sense. I mean, especially if we're gonna, if we can go with that kind of option, you're saving that 750,000.
Yeah.
Even if you spent 500,000 to lure the people, the employees into that, you're still $250,000 savings.
And if you wanted the $1,000 deductible plan, you had to put your 22 towards it, and you had to make up the 2,000 out of your check. So,
Wow.
so you could actually have fully covered insurance and about 2,000 going into your HSA, which is where, people want if they're healthy. And that helps us because we are paying a lot lower deductible.
And the HSA also resorts to a retirement in the end, is that correct?
Correct.
So people could put that back and they don't use it, they could turn it into a retirement.
So I have a health savings account, and my employer puts money into it. I also can elect to put even more money into it. Also, the health savings account I have Also, you can, once you build that up, you can actually put some of that into investment. So it gets even a higher interest rate as well.
Yep, all that's-
And you can use it, but it's specific, you have to use it just for health expenses. But you have it, even when you leave, you have that.
And I think that's something we should offer. I really think we need
I think so
to
too.
offer an HSA, but in order to have it, you cannot have the lower deductible plans, the richer plans. You can't have those. So I've never had an HSA because I've always been on these other plans because I use the insurance quite a bit.
But it's something we could offer.
If you're healthy, why not go with a higher deductible, put money in your HSA, and over time, you would have enough money if it happened, you could actually put that and have your
Pay all your out-of-pocket
deductible covered
expenses.
and rebuild again. I mean, it's a good plan for people that are healthy.
We had a different deal, but I don't think it was insurance. It was, like we put 200 a month or something like that out of Debbie's check away every year.
So
but
there used
then
to
we
be
had
a
to
flexible
spend that.
savings
That's
account.
what it was.
And
Flex,
that you
yeah.
have to spend at the end
By
of
the
the
end
year.
of the
Yeah.
But a health
It's a
savings account, you do not.
It's a
I see.
retirement
It can
fund.
build
almost.
up
I
money.
see.
You
Yeah, I
buy-
remember we had to spend it by the end of the year.
Yep, that's a flexible.
I think if it's something that, I mean, as we're looking it's at a hard decision of cuts or whatever we have to do to get to that baseline, if we can save roughly $250,000 to $500,000 a year easily on that by offering some of that stuff, I think we need to possibly, my thought is go and look at what's offered and, possibly, I mean, I care about the employees too, so if it's something that they'd be benefiting from, obviously, no one's gonna say no if you're benefiting, correct? But it might be something that you all as staff reach out and say, hey, we're looking at, trying to change up some insurance stuff. What do you all think of this, you know? I mean, and give us the feedback, because budget season's here,
Do one of those surveys.
like a monkey survey
Yeah,
or
we do
whatever.
a survey monkey.
Yeah, to your employees.
Okay, I just have a couple last things. I know it's getting late, and I need to get Daryl home.
Oh,
Budget,
Kids are home.
budget season.
The last few things that I want to show is I just dropped some numbers on here for the general fund. At 2.6 million that were expenses over revenue, I think we can increase interest income 250 with the proper cash system. Eventually, we could save at least 400, probably more in health insurance. We can cut the current year asks that the departments had by 400. And if we were to use some of that leftover budget for this year, of about 500, we'd be looking at cuts maybe of about 1.1 million, and we could at least balance the budget this year if we kind of look at those things like that.
So quick question then with, the cuts and to be able to balance, and you've already talked to department heads about this, you need to get in and do this, with capital expenditures, still some of them out there. Is it a recommendation from you that possibly we should, as council, freeze those, the remaining of the capital expenditures being until, we can guarantee this is under control again?
Capital is hard to freeze during the year because we already have RFPs and purchase orders on a lot of it. Next year, it can be either frozen to start the year, or we could do a separate capital budget that is actually adopted, through a budget amendment later in the year, once we kind of know, past the overall general fund. But capital budgets, normally, I want to say always, but I'm going to say normally, are separate budgets from the operating budget. You usually have a capital budget and an operating budget. Capital budget needs to be tied to funded depreciation. It just needs to. And right now, I would say that our asset listing really lacks reliability. We've got to get that fixed.
Don't laugh.
I don't know
Don't
how else to put that. It needs to be fixed, and we
Okay.
need a funded depreciation schedule, that we're on a schedule. At that point, we've got capital assets figured out. We're
So-
funding them, they're coming due.
So as I asked last year to pass an operational budget for our obligation for state statutes, right? I asked to pass just a operational budget, and that, I guess that was misunderstood, but that's what you're asking, or saying, ultimately, you're saying pretty much, we could pass an operational budget to guarantee we make state statute guidelines, regulations, come back when we know everything's in place, and we can come back and amend for capital expenditures.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Capital budgets are, I'm gonna say they're always separate budgets. I don't know too many that combine them. We do, so I'm not gonna say always, because we combine them, but I think they need to be separate budgets.
I would agree. Thank you.
Yeah, and because they're also gonna have separate funding sources and a lot of things that are separate. All right, the last two things that I want to show here are not really numbers related. I just want to share with you kind of the way I see the organization a little bit and improvements that we need to make here if we're going to be successful budget-wise, okay? So these are things that I feel strongly that we need to put into place, find a way, a strategy to implement and to follow kind of what this is, if we're gonna build a budget, you know, that is based upon a plan, a business plan, accountability. So what I have here is just something I created, but if you look at any financial transaction that the city enters into, it's going to start from a source that's outside of the organization. Okay, it's going to start with a vendor or a contractor. Okay, in order for that to occur, that transaction has to come into the organization, and the first net, I don't know what you'd say, safety net or whatever, is going to be through the city council, through policy. We're going to have to follow certain guidelines through policy, through procedures, how to purchase. All of those things are set through policy, ordinance, resolution. Okay? So as it comes in, it has to go through that to make sure that it's within budget, all those things from a council standpoint. At that point, the transaction will hit the department level. Okay? At the department level, it has to come in, it has to make sure that it meets specification of what they're trying to do. It's going to have to meet budget that they have, and it's going to have to go through that department after it goes through everything that the council lays out. At that point, they sign off on the purchase order, they sign off on that information, it flows through the finance department. The finance department then creates the actual purchase order. The finance department checks the budget as well and makes sure that it's all okay. And then after it goes through that, it hits our general ledger. It gets entered in, processed, and then it works its way out of the organization the same way. It is a financial report through the finance department, out of the system. We produce financial reports. Department heads get that, and they make sure that they're within budget, that the project was successful, and then it goes out again through the city council being approved through the accounts payable vouchers, you know, that is approved, and through audit reports and through monthly reports here it goes out, and then the audit report goes out to the community to show that we're accountable.
So a quick and easy way of saying that is pay your bills after, or approve your bill payments after you, get it.
I
Don't,
think that's a lot of it.
don't approve your bills after they're paid.
I think that's a lot of it, but I think our flow right now, what you're saying, is not this. Okay, our overall flow right now is the financial reporting, we're still behind on audits, one behind. I think budget comparisons, report to department heads and all these things, I really think we need to get a business plan in place and we follow that according to this so that every step of the way, there's internal controls, we're watching it, and we have a flow of information into the organization and then the proper flow out. And I think we need to do a lot of improvements. One of those is the finance office needs to come up with like a purchasing manual, and we need to have expectations and controls over purchasing. That just has to happen. We have to get the electronic approval routings, purchasing. If we were to hire a purchasing agent right now within the city, we would actually make money on that. Because we buy enough supplies, we could get into purchasing groups with overall discounts. And if they are good at their job, they're gonna have more savings than what we're gonna pay them in salary.
Yes, indeed.
But we have to devise an overall system of checks and balances to make that work and to set that up.
Tom, Chris just touched on a subject. We always, we come in here and we approve accounts payable, but those checks went out last week. That just gives me heartburn so bad.
Well, if you were to say, what's this transaction, I'm not approving it, it's too late.
Right, that's what part that gives me heartburn.
And if you read the state statute, the way I read it is, it needs to be approved before it goes out. Now, even within the finance office, I get a purchase requisition with a receipt attached to it. And I'm like, we're gonna turn this into a purchase order. Well, what is a purchase order? A purchase order is a promise to pay and authorization to enter into that transaction. It's already a done deal. We've already purchased it and they're bringing the receipt, putting it to it, and then we're out creating the purchase order. True purchasing is, I need this, this, and this, go through an agent.
Yeah.
They're out making that, or say, okay, I have this and this, here's the purchase order, send that to the vendor to say we're authorized to purchase this. And then they get that knowing that it's authorized.
Yeah, we used to get a lot of purchase orders from various companies for special orders and stuff like that, and it was a guaranteed sale. You didn't have to pick up the phone and call and ask questions. You ordered it, you sold it, you have proof, here's the proof you're gonna pay for it.
That's it.
And that's kind of the way it went, but
That's it.
it just bothers me that we vote on, I know I'll get a check or something, and then I'll notice that we're voting on accounts payable, and I already got the check
Yeah, and it's already in the bank.
for a sign or something.
Credit cards work the same way. If we use a credit card to make like a supply purchase, money has changed hands.
Yeah,
I can't deny it at that point in the finance office, because it's
Right.
done.
right.
And I think it needs to be approved on a purchase order.
And it's never been a problem since I've been here, right? We haven't had one problem as far as I know, but, boy, I just see some potential there.
Yeah, I think we need to get a purchasing manual devised and policies as to how to do things. We lack in that, honestly, in every aspect right now. And that's something I needed to really get on and to come up with approval routings, who has to approve certain things. I think certain things should, for a dollar amount, should come to the city council even to be approved before we even enter into a purchase order. Things that reach the council attention.
Yeah. It's hard to decide what that line is, but
Yeah, it just needs to be there because I get your day-to-day operations and stuff like that. I understand that, but when we're talking like something major or something like that or different things, that's not, to me, it's not acceptable to not have an approval before it happens, you
Yeah,
know?
we're gonna work on that, the purchasing. All right, one last slide, I promise, this is it. I've kept you here way too long.
This is early.
All right, some common
I've
trends
seen
that
2
we
o'clock on
see.
budget.
Okay, some common trends throughout all of the funds that we've seen and kind of the status of where we're at. City-wise right now, I think we have a lack of maintenance in a lot of areas. The water line, buildings, baseball fields, you go down, I think that's one area within the budget that we need to focus on is to find those funds and to prioritize what we need to maintain. I think we have a lack of funded depreciation right now that we need to build. We have several funds where the expenditures really outweigh the revenues. I think that's a common theme. I think that we have kind of a lack of a business plan right now in a lot of areas that I think we need to work on, and I think we have a lack of like internal controls as to spending. So those are the priorities that I think need to be into this next budget. The slide that I'm showing you here is how I think we need to work at it. Okay, as a finance office, we're gonna work on it. And what I'm showing here is the base of what we need. Okay, is we need an accounting system with policy and procedures. That's the base of what we need. To me, before we could focus on financial reporting and analytics or anything else, we've gotta have that base. That has to be a very high priority, either the system we have or a new system. We need to put everything that we talked about into place. Without that, I don't think we have anything above that. That is key. Second is we've got to have better financial reporting and analytics. That's the next step. Everybody needs to have good, reliable financial information with the goals outlined, and are we reaching those goals, or are we not reaching those goals? We have to put that into place. The next thing is we need a business plan, and we need to prioritize and define the services we have. Right now, we're operating on $5 million more than most cities, and we're not maintaining, and we can't really define our services. And if we continue down this road, we're gonna widen the gap even more as to expenditures and everything being higher than revenues. That's the next step, I think, is we need to devise business plans right down to the finance office. How do we know we had a good year? Do we know? Right now throughout the city, we don't know if we had a good year or a bad year, because we just had a year and here's the results. We need to know, did we have a good year or did we have a not so good year? We have to define what that is. I feel strongly that. Next, after that, I think we need to know where we need to position ourselves compensation-wise out into the marketplace, into the rest of the economy. If we want to go lower compensation, then in other words, I mean, that we could do that. If we want to attract really good employees, we need an overall plan to get them attracted. And if that is higher compensation or different compensation, I just think we need to position and have that defined. And wherever that falls out is good. That's, the council, but I think we need that defined we need to come up with a plan how to maintain what we have, the water lines, the buildings. I think that's the next step. And then the next step is a strategic plan. I think our strategic plan that we built was a beautiful document. I think we built a beautiful roof. We forgot to put the walls on the building. But we had a beautiful roof, and that's our strategic plan. We cannot support a strategic plan until we get everything else down there in order. That's the pinnacle of what we do. Okay, and it is a great document that we have. I was highly impressed. That's a lot of the reason I came, is I saw the strategic plan, and I'm like, I want to be a part of that. But it has to be tied to the budget, it has to be tied to everything below that. That's the next step in the hierarchy. And the last thing that we build is community trust based on what we can do. And that will lead to economic development throughout our city. It's hard to bring people here right now when we can't produce water. Our sewer system's aging. I don't think we can entice people here. We build this, people are gonna come to Rawlins. I promise you. They're gonna seek us out, and we're gonna have to select what economic development we want, because there's not gonna be room for all of it. If we can get that built. I really, truly believe that we need to build those steps, build that community trust, and then we're there. I think we can sit back. The left-hand side of this is what we call Maslow's hierarchy. Has anybody heard of Abraham Maslow?
Absolutely.
His thing is, down below, you have to have your psychological needs met before you can go to the next step. So you need food, shelter. I mean, how can you go to school and learn when you're starving? You know, you're not. The next step is you need friends, you know, and then the next step is your esteem, and then your top part is your self-actualization. Strategic plan is self-actualization for the city of Rawlins. That's what it is. And we need to make sure we have water. You see there at the bottom. We need sewer. We need infrastructure.
We need sleep, Tom.
We need.
That's Jackie's hint, I think.
Excellent way to end it.
I am done, he says. Hey, that led perfect for what you wanted. We need sleep.
I just think Maslow's hierarchy is where we're at. It fits our organization so well, and it hit me about 1 in the morning that.
You don't have
You
sleep.
get revelation if you stay up till.
You know, Tom, I gotta tell you something. Tonight was very enlightening. I think I understand the finances of our city better than I ever have, where we're at, where we need to go, what the problems are. This is a pretty tough read. I'm not real happy about what some of that stuff, but in order to fix things, you have to find the problems. And I really appreciate the fact you have a grasp on this at a much higher level than I've ever heard anybody speak about it, and I appreciate it. And I really do have high hopes that we can get some things straightened out, get them better, make them better.
We're gonna make it better. That's my promise to everyone here. We're gonna make it better. In fact, we're gonna make it great. Not better, we're gonna make it great. We are. I'm actually excited.
Make Rawlins great again?
Oh, gosh.
I have a hat idea. Oh,
We're all thinking.
actually, I have
At
a
least
MAGA
bring us
hat
into
that
the
was,
21st
I have a
century,
MAGA
yeah.
hat that came from the inauguration. And I've had to hide it. I got people wanting to rip it up. But anyway, yeah, you know, I've always been amazed at Rawlins. I moved here for 2 years in 1978. I didn't like the town, but I could make some money. and I've always made a living. I've never done real well, but I've always made a good living, made some really good friends. The people are amazing. This place has more potential than any place I can ever even think of. And some of the things, getting them straightened out like you're talking about, to where, you know, we're not chiseling names in rocks and stuff. We actually have computers, and we're, you know, and get all that lined out. I'm excited again, to be quite honest with you.
And Jack, you want sleep? No.
You gonna call it?
You look pretty tired. All right, thanks,
But I'd
everybody.
wait for 5 more minutes for.
Yeah. But thank